Ready? All right, welcome to the Town of Acton Planning Board meeting for Thursday, March 3rd at 2022 at 6 p.m. Stand for the pledge. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You want to do the motion for minutes?
Yeah, as to the approval of minutes, Mr. Chair, there's several weeks' minutes in there. We just received them just before this meeting. Given that we also have a public hearing tonight and a lot of people here in attendance, I'm going to move that we postpone approving the minutes until next week.
Second. All in favor? 3-0. All right, welcome to the public hearing for proposed ordinance and changes. We only have, what, 6 tonight?
I think so.
And this is more of an informative public hearing for the people. There will be another one that's scheduled for May 5th. Which after the changes, well, if we do any changes from your input tonight, or we change anything after the fact, that'll be our final draft proposed. And they're all on the town website. So anyone at home can look them up on the town website. All right, I'm gonna have Bernard, it's gonna be our narrator tonight for reading, so if you want.
Ready?
Yeah.
Okay, so, available to you are copies of each of the proposed warrant articles, and the planning board has been having workshops pretty much weekly to work on these, and we had one as recently as yesterday. So the reason I'm mentioning that is that what you have at the door and what the board has been given tonight are the most recent drafts. As recent as yesterday, some changes were made, so even the board may not be aware of some of the changes that were proposed as of yesterday. So if it seems like it's news to them, some of it, it's because it is. Most of these, however, haven't changed much in the past few weeks. So what we're going to do is start with the ones that are the least involved so that we can get those moving, and also so we get kind of a rhythm between how we do this. So I will, with each one, I will explain to you what prompted the proposed change in the ordinance so that you have an understanding of why the planning board is suggesting that we implement these changes, explain what it is, read it through together, and then the chair will take over and lead discussion, because as Chris indicated, we want to know what you think of it. If you see things maybe that we didn't include that we should have, changes that you suggest, and so forth. Because again, the board has not voted on these in final form, and that will probably not happen till next week. So the one we're going to start with is proposed amendments to the zoning ordinance relative to tiny houses. So if everybody wants to get that, and anything that is a proposed change to the ordinance is shaded and underlined if we're adding, and it's shaded with a line through it if we're striking existing language. So why are we proposing an ordinance related to tiny houses? Simply because the state of Maine, the legislature, enacted a law that whether we want to or we don't, all towns and cities within the state have to allow tiny houses on any lot where they would allow a single-family dwelling. So that's what prompted this. It's not the board saying, oh, we think you should be able to have a tiny house under these circumstances. It's just simply being proposed to update our town ordinance to track with state law. So if you're on page 2, Article 3, Construction of Language and Definitions, 3.2, definitions. In this ordinance, the following terms shall have the following meanings unless a contrary meaning is required by the content or is specifically prescribed. That language already exists in our ordinance related to other definitions. So, underlined and highlighted, tiny house, a living space permanently constructed on a frame or chassis and designed for use as a permanent living quarters. Again, that's the definition provided by the state, not developed by us. 5.14.3, tiny house. A, complies with the American National Standards Institute, Standard A, 1195, on plumbing, propane, fire, and life safety, and construction, or National Fire Protection Association Standard 1192 on plumbing, propane, and fire and life safety for recreational vehicles. B, does not exceed 400 square feet in size. C, does not exceed any dimensions allowed for operation on a public way under this title. D, is a vehicle without motive power. E, does not include a trailer, semi-trailer, camp trailer, recreational vehicle, or manufactured housing. So those are the definitions that the state has mandated, and if enacted, then in terms of our land use chart, we would be adding, if you look at the top of page 2 of 2, shaded and underlined, we would be adding tiny houses to the chart, and the letter R, that CEO review would be required, and that tiny houses by law would be added in all of the zones.
But resource protection.
Except resource protection. And that is, I guess, because single-family homes are not allowed in resource protection, because again, state law now requires anywhere a single-family dwelling is allowed by law, we have to allow tiny houses. Mr. Chair.
We'll open up to public comment for this one.
Dennis Long. Quite often people are reluctant to start this public part of it, so I'd like to break the ice. I really have nothing to say, I just wanted to break the ice. No, I'm kidding.
We do have another icebreaker available.
There's two things here. And the definition of the national code that we have to, it has to follow to have one of these tiny homes. These codes are set obviously by the national code for manufactured housing. I believe there is a business out there that manufactures these tiny houses. And according to this, they wouldn't be allowed. You understand what I mean?
I don't.
I do.
You can't, according to this, you cannot use a tiny house that is manufactured.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
All right. Well noted.
see what you mean.
The other thing is, I see here, that it's not allowed in the Resource Protection District. If you have the land, is my understanding, enough property, that the state says that you can put a tiny house on your property, provided you meet the 90,000 square foot for one house. We have quite a few places in town. We have some places in town that are grandfathered with the law changed in 2011 when the town redid the maps. And I don't think it's right with these people that have these properties, if they wanted to put one of these tiny houses in, because it's already developed. I don't see why they wouldn't be allowed to.
Well, so even if you look at, I just scrolled up for you, even our single family, this is our ordinance as it stands today. It says not permitted for a single family home, but there are exemptions to that. Like, so if they're, like you're saying, grandfathered, or if it's a developed area already with so many feet of that. So there are exemptions, but we're just following suit with what we have in our land use chart.
Right.
We're not gonna go change the whole chart.
But I guess what I'm saying is, according to your chart,
Well, according to our chart, you're not allowed to do a single-family home in the resource protection, but it's still allowed.
right,
If it meets a certain criteria.
so if you had enough acreage, you would still be able to put a tiny home on it?
It all depends on the circumstances, it's not just acreage now. Not that I know of.
Okay, but there are instances where a single-family home is allowed.
Yes.
So to Dennis's point, I think it should say R.
Well, then
Because-
you'd be changing every other thing, other than, why have a resource protection?
Yeah, we already had this conversation.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, this
We
is,
can move on to
this
the
is,
next thing.
I didn't.
Right, no, I know. We are including you in the conversation now, Dennis. It's just, when the conversation moves to just the board discussing it,
Okay.
we should be doing that after the public hearing.
Right, that would give,
I guess I don't understand then. You don't want to, are you saying you don't want to answer concerns that people have?
No, I'm just talking about this specific issue. But that's pretty much all the information that we have. That it's not permitted in the Resource Protection District.
Right, and what I'm saying is, I don't understand.
if you created a new lot today, would not allow.
I appreciate that.
Would not allowed to be a buildable resource protection.
Right, no, and I agree
You
with
have
that.
grandfathered instances, you do have other similar instances, but if you look at our land use chart, we haven't changed anything. Ends all the way down the board for every dwelling from single family to multifamily. And as you know, as well as I know, and these guys, there are exceptions to this.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna go change the whole land use chart.
Well, you wouldn't, you would just have to change that one thing for tiny houses. You're adding the tiny house, and you would just change that one and say it's, with an R or something.
Any lot in the resource protection is telling me it's permitted. It's not that way.
No, what I would glean from this, and I guess I agree with Gavin, we'll talk about it as a board later.
Okay.
I'm glad for what you highlighted, because it does generate the discussion. My opinion would be, if the single dwelling family is indicated as not allowed in resource protection, then the same would be true for tiny house. However, if there were an exception made, grandfathered in, someone did have a dwelling in the resource protection, then we would have to allow a single family, tiny house to track with that, because we would not be allowed to prohibit the tiny house on a lot where there was a single family dwelling allowed.
It was allowed.
So, yeah, I agree with what you're saying.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. But
Hi, Joyce Bakshi. Just, can you tell me what motive power is? Was that picked up erroneously, or should it be motor power?
Yes, you're right. Thank you.
Oh, good, I was afraid.
We needed you for something, Joyce. Thank you.
One of the definitions here does not exceed 400 square feet. Is that total volume if you have more than one level, or is that the footprint?
That's a livable space.
Total livable space. Thank you.
Space.
For transparency's sake, I'm inquiring as to where it would be documented, what would be allowed in resource protection that would be grandfathered, because I can see instances where it might be said that we were favoring certain landowners or not. If it's not written somewhere where it can be shown to whoever might come in to apply for a permit. You know, one person may not be able to do it and another would. Where's the documentation as to what's grandfathered?
It's in the ordinance, somewheres.
Okay, because I went through the ordinance today, and of course, I didn't see it, so, but I obviously could have missed it. So, but for transparency's sake and to, you know, discourage problems later on, where someone might say that someone's getting preferential treatment, it's something to think about.
Yeah, what I envision would happen, Leslie, is that if somebody has a property in the resource protection area and there is a single-family dwelling on it, and anyone in the town says you cannot add a tiny house, that it would be either worked out or litigated, because state law is anywhere a single-family dwelling is allowed, you have to allow the tiny house.
Okay.
So I really can't imagine a scenario where the town could say you can't have a tiny house even though you have a single-family dwelling.
Yeah, well, like, my concern is, you know, it applies to this, but, you know, there's a lot down where I live that was always considered, for 80 years, considered unbuildable. Well, now they're building on it. And there's been a lot of controversy over it, because how did this all happen? And because there's no documentation. So, and I know how contentious that has been, so
Yeah.
I'd like to not see that happen again if we can perhaps prevent it.
Yeah, we don't want to have litigation.
So, all right, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other comments or questions about this? All right, we'll move forward then.
Proposed amendment to the zoning ordinance relative to structure. Give me a minute to find that one.
Are you gonna read it first, or?
I will.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, so that's a one-page document. Why is the planning board bringing this forward? Because the state definition of structure changed to include what we have proposed to be added, so it's the shaded and underlined language to the definition of structure. So again, once again, we're just proposing a change to bring our current ordinance language in line with the state's. So, structure, anything built for the support, shelter, or enclosure of persons, animals, goods, or property of any kind, together with anything constructed or erected with a fixed location on or in the ground, exclusive of, and here's the added language, subsurface wastewater disposal systems, geothermal heat exchange wells, water wells, that's the end of added language, fences, poles, wiring, and other aerial equipment normally associated with service drops, as well as guying and guy anchors. The term includes structures temporarily or permanently located, such as decks, patios, and satellite dishes. Mr. Chair.
We'll open up this for questions or comments.
Ani Murray. I think you should revisit this because years ago, they had the mandatory shoreline zoning act done in Maine, and since then it's been changed. But the DEP, I don't think ever considered septic tanks, septic systems as a structure. And if you look at chapter 1000, you'll see in there that, I didn't know you were going to do this, I would have brought the statute up, but chapter 1000 has, instead of the setback referring to a structure, they define septic system as a wastewater treatment system. And in the chapter 1000, it says that you have to have a setback of 100 feet or 1,000 feet, whatever it is. So we had, our rules said that the definition of a structure had to be set back, and a structure was considered a septic system. So if you take the septic system out of it, out of our ordinance, then there is no setback for a septic system, the way I see it. So I'd take a look at chapter 1000, DEP. I don't know what section it is, but it's in there. They have the same definition of what you want to change it to. They exclude the structure out of the law, but they have a setback for the septic system.
Chapter 1000 is a guide from the state. A lot of towns have adopted it, Acton has not.
Well, just you could adopt chapter 1000 verbatim, word for word, and that could be a zoning ordinance, or you could adopt the rules out of it and use it in your own. But you can't, just like all state laws, you can't make it any less. So if you have a state law at DEP, it says 1,000-foot setback, or I mean 100-foot setback, that pertains. But I mean, I think you should look at it. Thank you.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Anyone else? All right, we'll move forward.
Okay, next we're gonna look at proposed zoning ordinance changes relative to accessory dwelling units. Is this also, did this come forth also because of changes in state law? Yes?
It was just more clarification.
Okay. So I'm told by Mr. Savigny, our code enforcement officer, that these changes were proposed just to make it, to clarify it, make it easier, more clear, more succinct. So the proposal in the definition is to strike the word additional dwelling units and change it to accessory dwelling units, or ADU. Only one accessory dwelling unit, ADU, located within or detached from an owner-occupied single-family dwelling shall be permitted. So that's the proposal.
Any questions, comments for this one, or?
And as the land use charts, that they are not allowed in the resource protection, shoreland zone, or Little Ossipee district. And it does not apply to, so there are some instances where they're not allowed. Just to make that clear.
All set. Right.
You guys should let me pick more of them.
What's that? Oh, okay.
I can say something if you have.
Oh, well, we're gonna get on to the meatier ones.
Yeah, you'll have-
So there'll be
you-
plenty of time to talk, Dennis.
All right. The next one, Bernard.
Okay, the next one
Gavin missed you, by the way, that's why we're waiting.
are proposed changes related to mixed-use structures. And what generated this proposed change, my understanding, this preceded my joining the board, but this relates to allowing, we have a mixed-use zone in Acton. This refers to mixed-use structures, which means allowing a single structure to have more than one use. And the reason that this came about, when you're ready, the reason that this came about was that an owner of commercial property was finding that his property was basically useless as far as there wasn't enough demand for commercial use in Acton. You know, we don't have a lot of businesses, stores, storefronts, and so forth. So the idea of this is to allow, if it's approved, that someone with commercial property wouldn't be restricted to using it just for a commercial building. Like somebody could have, let's say, a hardware store or a barber shop or something on the first floor, and within the same structure, have another use, such as apartments. So this would increase the potential for use for that type of property owner. So let's start with proposed definitions, bottom of the first page. Mixed-use structure. A building or structure with a variety of contemporary and integrated uses, such as, but not limited to residential, office, manufacturing, retail, public, and recreational facilities. And then the proposed changes to the land use chart to incorporate what's being proposed into the chart. So if you look in most of the zones, there's no change. It's an N, a mixed-use structure would not be allowed. However, it's proposed that it would be allowed in commercial zones A and C presently, is what's proposed.
Jason, if you want to put the map up there, people can see the commercial zones in the mixed-use district. Might be illuminating.
And I frankly don't remember why what's being proposed does not include allowing mixed use in commercial zone B. Does anyone have a recollection of that? Or is it a mistake?
No, it's not a mistake.
No, it's not. There was a reason for it.
I thought there was, and I thought Gavin might be the one who remembers.
Well, once we get the map up there, commercial B is over by Wilson Lake on the left,
Oh, yeah, it's that little,
and it's a pretty small area. When we had North Star help us with this, this was one of the things that they thought that zone didn't really matter. Well, it's just, I don't know, I mean, the major difference.
right.
And, okay.
The major difference is in the, on page 1, commercial B, this district designed to service the lakes and numerous summer residents. The district will also be protected with additional environmental safeguards related to water usage, impervious surface, and phosphorus control measures. Just given the proximity to the lakes, that area is a little more sensitive than our other commercial districts, such as the red on the right-hand side and the purple going up H Road. And not nearly so large. There's not really that many properties we'd be talking about there. And then the mixed-use zone is on the bottom left in blue. It's French Street down by Milton Mills. So that, it's also CEO review in that area.
Thanks.
Questions, comments?
How does this differentiate from a home business?
We had this conversation the other day. Home occupations are allowed anywheres, I'll have to break it out again. Home occupation is different than a commercial use. There's a definition here, or there's, so a home occupation could be anything from up to 2 people, working out of the house, relatives, family, things like that, where could be, it does differ. You put me on the spot now.
Well, I can read the definition for home occupation if you'd like. This term shall mean an occupation or profession which is clearly conducted on or in a residential structure or property, and which is, 1, clearly incidental to and compatible with the residential use of the property and surrounding residential uses, and 2, which employs no more than 2 persons other than family members residing in the home. So it's clearly a residential structure, whereas right now in the commercial districts, we don't allow new residential structures, because we're trying to consolidate commercial uses in those areas, but it hasn't been working that well, so we thought some type of residential structure might be a good idea. But it's definitely bigger than a home occupation.
Home occupation is already all the way across the board, except for inside the shoreline zone.
I think the difference is the type of use that's allowed within a particular structure. With people being allowed to use a home in a particular way, that's a permitted use within a structure. This is different because you're allowing not only a different use, but also a different structure. You can't build a storefront and apartments on your single-family dwelling lot.
Okay.
This would allow someone with a commercial lot to do just that. So the difference is the type of structure that's allowed as opposed to the use necessarily.
Okay, one thing that came to my mind is a dwelling in Shapley has a commercial use for the ground floor and residential use up above that. Now, what would you term that?
Mixed use.
Mixed use?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you got the corner store where they actually had a restaurant down there, and then there used to be an apartment on top.
Right, I was thinking of like the yoga studio, which is a small,
It's the
more or
same-
less would be a home occupation.
That would be a mixed use.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, comments for mixed use structures? All right, we'll move on to the next.
Okay, the next one is residential rental units. And what brings this issue back before the voters is that last year there was a proposed ordinance regulating short-term rental units only. And it did not pass. And most of the feedback, at least from my recollection at the town meeting, was people felt it wasn't fair to regulate only short-term rentals versus all rentals in Acton. What brought it forth largely on short-term rentals starting out were safety concerns. Chief Smith spoke at the meeting about concerns, for example, that people from, I'll say out of state, particularly a distance away, might rent for a weekend or a week near the lake. They might not really realize exactly what their location is. If cell service is poor, when they call in to report an emergency and they literally don't know what their location is, and it might not be possible for the fire department or ambulance to know where they are necessarily. Are there proper egress from the building? Is somebody renting out their apartment to, 15 people when it really isn't safe, and so forth. So those were some of the concerns that generated initially a proposed ordinance change related only to short-term rentals. And again, the feedback was, that's not fair if you're only going to regulate short-term rentals. So now what we're proposing is an ordinance that would regulate all rentals in Acton. So we'll go through what the proposed language is and, open for feedback. So I'm going to start on the second page, language and definitions. Owner, any person or persons who alone, jointly, severally, or jointly and severally with others, A, has a legal or record title to any dwelling, dwelling unit accessory, dwelling unit residential, and/or dwelling multifamily. B, has charge, care, or control of any dwelling, dwelling unit accessory, dwelling unit residential, and/or dwelling multifamily, as an agent of the owner, executor, administrator, trustee, or guardian of the estate of the owner. Or C, and/or C, has an equitable interest in a dwelling, dwelling unit accessory, dwelling unit residential, and/or dwelling unit multifamily under a contract or bond or a deed with the person having legal or record title. And, okay, next would be what constitutes a residential rental unit under this proposal. Residential rental units include any tiny house, dwelling, or dwelling unit accessory, dwelling unit residential, and/or dwelling multifamily, or portion thereof, in which space is rented or offered for rent by the owner or operator to be occupied or intended to be occupied by any persons not related to the owner under Maine law. So basically that means if the owner of a house of any type of structure that allows dwelling, whether it's tiny house, single family, dwelling unit accessory, multifamily, any of those, if you're going to rent out the whole unit or any portion of it for someone other than a family member, then you would be subject to these requirements. So residential rental units, this would be laying out what the owner needs to do or have his or her agent do if they're going to engage in rental business in Acton. 5.30A, owner of residential rental, owners of residential rental units in Acton, Maine, must register said units with the town's code enforcement officer by December 31st, 2022, or within 30 days of first holding the property out for rental or renting the property thereafter, whichever comes first. B, the property owner shall provide a valid certificate of insurance covering rental as a use and naming the town of Acton as a certificate holder. C, the property's 911 address, property owner / operator's telephone number, and rental permit stating permit conditions shall be posted visibly to tenants. D, at least one operational fire extinguisher shall be accessible on every floor of the building. E, each rental unit shall have code-compliant egress or equivalent as determined by the Acton Fire Department. F, code-compliant smoke carbon monoxide detectors must be installed and operational on each level and in each bedroom. G, a state of Maine approved subsurface septic system in use. H, maximum occupancy of each rental unit shall be determined by the chief of the Acton Fire Department. And then on the second page, shaded and highlighted are where the residential rental units would be permitted. They all would require CEO review.
Any comments, questions, concerns?
Has any research been done as far as the numbers of year-round rentals that Acton has?
No.
Because I don't know of very many. So this, in essence, seems geared toward the short-term properties, short-term rental properties that we have on the lakes. And there was a lot of problems and discussion last year about the expense of egress windows and that would be out of reach for a lot of people. If this was about safety, and I would think that every resident in the town of Acton should have to follow this. I mean, we're singling out, again, the non-resident property owners who pay the lion's share of our property taxes and making it difficult for them to rent their properties. A lot of them only rent it for a couple of weeks a year to pay their taxes. And they pay astronomical amounts of taxes. And I would like to know, before town meeting, approximately how many long-term rentals we do have in town.
Well, I would say that's your prerogative to do that research.
There's, you know, there has to be a balance between what we're requiring of these owners and their property rights.
Kevin, couldn't address some of it for you.
Yeah, in terms of your first issue there, I feel like this is essential to going along with our mixed-use structures. Like, if we're gonna be allowing apartments, we really wanna have something like this that, because right now we have nothing on rentals in the ordinance at all, and if we're gonna be bringing in, allowing different types of rentals, we need to have some sort of baseline. So I feel like it really goes along with the mixed-use structures as well as any rental that's in the town. And then we did, if you look at the third page, E, initially, we had that you needed a code-compliant egress window for every bedroom, and now we've changed it so that you just need to have code-compliant egress as determined by the active fire department. So when they go through their walkthrough, if they say, yes, we can operate in this situation, we can get in, we can get people out, you don't need a code-compliant egress window in every bedroom if the active fire department signs off on your layout, your house layout, basically. So we did address that pretty directly.
Okay, all right. And I, you know, and I don't think, someone who lives here year-round needs to have the 911 address and telephone, their landlord's telephone number posted. I mean, that's ridiculous. So.
Well,
But
people will either vote it through because they want it, or they won't.
Yeah.
And it's fine, I mean, nobody here has any personal agenda or anything at stake with it. I mean, frankly, last year, people said their objection was the egress windows and that it was only short-term rentals, so this year we're doing all rentals. And it sounds like you're suggesting it should be only short-term, so.
No, I'm suggesting that we shouldn't be targeting the property taxpayers who are non-residents, who have no say in this, who pay the lion's share of our taxes, and making it difficult for them to maintain their properties by renting it out a couple weeks a year to pay their taxes. That's all. I mean, it's, granted, the egress windows in every bedroom was taken out, which makes it a little better, but still, this looks like it's geared toward the short-term rentals again. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Hi. On the last page, under H, maximum occupancy of each rental unit shall be determined by the Acton Fire Department.
I spoke with Chief Smith to see if he has a program that will, there's something in there for him that he actually can tell you the amount of occupancy per square footage.
Okay, because
allowed in a room. So I asked him if he felt comfortable and we could do it together if he wanted to, if he felt.
that was going to be my question.
Yeah, there is
Wasn't
a
this
program.
more a CEO?
Yeah. I left it, my conversation with him was, if he didn't feel comfortable, I would do it with him. He said he felt fine.
Because under Maine law, I mean, common sense tells us, if you have a septic system that is only so large, you only really, I think for bedrooms, 90 gallons of water is what a septic is. So if you have 3 bedrooms, if my math is still correct, that's it. Good. I'm glad yours was, you didn't have new math either.
I've seen these
Good.
more than once.
So, that tells you, you're going, okay, you've got 3 bedrooms, so, 6 people, and occasionally, you have Uncle Harry sleeping on the couch or something like that. But otherwise, unless there is, and this almost goes into criminal law, if there's a situation where there's domestic disturbance and the children are 1 week they're with dad and another time they're with mom, there has to be so much space allotted children in an area, and that can come in. So that's why I really did question that, how it could possibly be determined, common sense-wise, but we all know common sense is kind of,
Well, and we want it to be
Thanks.
consistent.
yeah.
I mean, some jurisdictions spell out
How many?
square footage per person, ceiling height, all of that, and we just did not want to get into all that scrutiny and make it cumbersome and unreasonable.
Right, exactly.
But I agree, there needs to be some kind of objective criteria that's applied,
Yeah, I think common sense.
Some give, too,
Yeah.
and some give, so it's not just,
Well, I think that's something you have to realize with a couple of things have already been spoken about.
Sure.
You always, I believe, have to give the CEO some wiggle room.
yep.
Because when it comes down to it, he who wears the crown. So he has to have some wiggle room. And that would go back to what we were talking about earlier, about resource protection, AUDs, things like that. It has to be much different. But that was my question on H. Thank you.
Thank you.
How you guys doing? I wasn't aware of some of the changes you guys were doing until Saturday. And so Saturday, I heard that it was going to be rental for all rental units, so I had to do a little backtrack. So I did watch one of the planning board meetings, and somebody brought up the thing, why was this brought up in the first place? And I'll tell you what they said. 65s for homes were for rent on Airbnb. This is becoming a booming industry that needs regulation. There was safety issues, overloaded septic systems, and there was a suit against the town. Well, let's start with a booming industry. I don't think it's a booming industry in this town. 65 rental homes. So I'd like to know what data you used to develop this. How many homes do you need to have on the rental thing to make it important? And I think it's important because one of the things I did just look at recently was how many homes that were for rent, rental homes in Acton. Online, it's 124, I think, of 125. Well, wait till those people find out that you're going to try and regulate them. And somebody said to me, well, how do they find that out? Well, today's days, you can find data everywhere. Everything's recorded. And if on your census report, one of the questions is, do you own this home or rent it? So, I mean, I don't know for sure, but I think you should find out what the necessity of doing this is. The other thing was parking, the noise, and everything else. I've been on Langley Shores Drive since 1963. And I'll tell you, the people that make the most noise, cause the most parking, are the owners that live on their things, and they invite all their families up. And we have a neighbor that's, when his family say there's 23 people. And so you always are going to have that parking problem. Since I've been there, I know of 2 instances of rental properties that were, and one was a commercial rental out of Key Realty down here, that they rented it to a local guy in Sanford, and every day, a whole bunch of people came up and partied. That was the worst one. And the only other person that we've had complaints about was a person that rented a building and left the lights on all night because they were afraid, and the light pollution was going into people's bedrooms. Because, these lakes homes, they're right next to each other. You can, hello, so you can't leave the lights on. But, I mean, it's just, I think most of the stuff that you get is anecdotal stories. Oh, there's been a whole bunch. Well, how much is a whole bunch of complaints? How many have you written down? How many have you logged in? I don't think there's a lot of people complaining about the noise and everything else. And as far as overloading this, nobody's going to let overload the septic system. And the other thing is Airbnb and those things, they have all kinds of regulatory things that after you rent, they get in touch with you. Did you have a good time? How was your landlord? And the landlord, the renter, he gets a thing from Airbnb. How was the customer? So you're not going to have that problem. I mean, that's just something that you think there, but it's not a problem. The other thing is safety, and common sense is a big thing. I don't know of anybody that lives around me that doesn't have smoke alarms, fire alarms, LP gas protectors, fire extinguishers. That's just common sense. That's common sense for everybody. As far as being dangerous, I tried to go through the last 10 years of fire calls 4 of the years, the calls, the information that's listed is incomplete. 1 year, there's no fires listed at all. Some years, all the fires are listed as a thing, brush fire, everything is all wrapped up in one, not structural fires. So it's hard to get. So I'd like to know, have some data, how many people have died or been injured in the last 20 years in Acton by fire? I mean, if you're trying to control something, you don't have a problem.
Do you think fires and fire safety is any different in Acton than anywhere else?
Yes. You think fire safety doesn't happen more in Portland than it does in Acton?
Well, yes, prevalence.
Oh, sure.
It takes one fire to...
Oh, yeah, but I mean, what's that? Once in every 50 years, so why would you take that? I mean, that's worse than a coin toss. I mean, everybody does risk assessment and probability. We drive down the road, we exceed the speed limit, people don't put on their safety belts, everybody takes a risk. Oh, I don't need it, it's not gonna happen to me. I mean, it's not gonna happen, and if you come back and tell me that I'm not gonna die from a fire in 5 years, why would I need all that stuff?
Well, why do you need fire insurance for your house then? If you're not gonna have a fire at your house, why would
I know, but you pay a less premium when your risk is left.
That's true.
When they ask you how far you're away from the hydrant, do you have a call fire department, that always jacks up your premium because your risk is lower, higher.
Well, I think your position on it and your opinion, of course, is valid, but it's more for the town meeting when people...
I agree that. I'm just saying, I'd like to see data, that's all.
I would just encourage you on the issue of common sense and fire extinguishers and smoke alarms to Google search noise, N-O-Y-E-S, street fire in Portland, and see what happened there in terms of common sense and the belief that everyone has operational smoke alarms and so forth in an apartment house.
No, but I don't say I believe that everybody has it. I mean, you can make it in this town here. That guy you're talking about, he didn't have operational ones. It's his fault. It's not the town's fault. Portland had the law.
Well, it was also that tenants created part of the situation with blocking exits with debris and garbage and whatever, and prior to that, there was no rental registration in Portland, there were no inspections, and so forth.
There was no inspections in Portland?
You weren't required to just by virtue of having an apartment house, no. No, sir, that came after that, you had to register.
But I mean, even if the rule was there, those people would have blocked the thing. I mean, if he's an absentee landlord, they're gonna, I don't know.
Yeah, and you know, what are we gonna have here? Predominantly absentee landlords, if people live out of state and own the property and rent it.
Where's the data that supports that?
Well,
That's just a guess.
Well, then it's Leslie's guess too, because that's what she just talked about in a different context, but that's who this was going to affect the most, is property owners, out-of-state property owners.
I understand it, but I don't get what you're saying. What are you saying? Most of these are gonna be absentee landlords?
They're not gonna be living in the state of Maine. They're gonna be in Massachusetts, Connecticut, New York, whoever owns property.
And they're gonna rent it?
Rent it out to some other person.
And they're not gonna know what's going on.
So they're not gonna be here.
They could rent it to
Dennis.
Believing that 4 people are coming for the weekend, and because they're in Connecticut, the owner, you could have 15 people show up, and they're not gonna know.
People use agencies, so if say you do an Airbnb, you book it out for 1 week, and then you book it out for the following week. Well, in between that week, they have a cleaning service come in.
Right.
Maintain their property. Yeah. They don't actually, and I'm not saying this is gonna happen to every rental, but they don't even see, they might not see that property for, months. So that's when he's saying the absentee landlord might not be around, I don't know.
Yeah,
Maybe I'm getting...
again, if it really, in my view, I'm not speaking for the board, it comes down to what the citizens of Acton want for their town. And if they vote this down, then they vote it down. It's okay. It's just.
Well, that's why I agree.
We're just putting it out. We're responding to the statement that it was only geared towards short-term rentals, and that wasn't fair. So we've broadened it, we've changed some of the egress requirements that people objected to.
That's the...
And we'll see what they say.
The other question, I have a couple more. It says the certificate, you have to give the town your insurance coverage, and the town has, as a certificate holder? What's a certificate holder?
When the certificate of insurance is issued, there's a box down in the left-hand corner, and it says certificate holder. Why we would want the town of Acton to be a certificate holder is that if someone's insurance lapses or they cancel it, the insurance company has to notify certificate holders that that's happened. So what that would prevent is somebody coming in with, here, I have insurance, and getting a permit, and then the insurance lapses, and we don't know that we have an uninsured property out there renting to people, that people, they get hurt, they're probably not gonna have much recourse. So that's what a certificate holder is, and that's why we're suggesting that that be required.
And it says here, the egress, one code compliant egress. What does that mean? What's...
A window that a fire department member can get through with his pack on through the window, and you can take people out of that window, or per se.
Or door.
Door is egress, but a window, they look to put a bigger window in than a standard window.
Well, that's what I'm getting at. I mean, so you have to have an egress window.
No, you don't have an egress.
You don't need a window, it just means a means of egress.
Well, it wouldn't be, if you had a bedroom, the door to the bedroom would be the way out?
Well,
That's an egress.
Well, if it led to a small pad deck, where you had a ladder down, then yeah, that would be your egress. It doesn't have to be a window.
Right. I just used a window as a general.
Yeah. Rather than saying there has to be like an egress window in every bedroom, for example, we're saying that if the fire chief is satisfied that there is at least one sufficient way out of that structure for the occupancy being allowed, that will suffice, rather than us micromanaging how many egress windows and where they are and so forth.
I just don't like to see it be, subjective to one person. I mean, he could just say, hey, I don't think that's right, and you're stuck with it. It should be more defined than that. I mean, he might be having a bad day and might not like you, and say, I've just seen instances on my road where rules for this person and this person did not apply to that person. And, I mean, they were pretty eager, pretty bad when you gotta put your leach field over there. You put it over there, across the street, and this guy, oh, you can leave it right there, even though he owns across the street. So I don't think that, that's a good thing. And the other thing is, one more thing, enforcement. How are you gonna enforce this?
Because there will likely be a fine imposed for...
I know, but how are you gonna, I live on a private road. I can gate my road and you're not even allowed down.
It's based on inspections, an initial inspection by the fire department. They come through, they give you your occupancy of the whole rental unit.
I know, but I'm just saying, somebody doesn't comply. How are you gonna find out that they didn't comply?
I would think during the inspection by the fire department, they would be looking at these performance standards.
I know, but I mean, what's gonna make them come down?
Register it is what you mean. If somebody just doesn't register it, period, don't comply.
Absolutely.
They might get away with it, or maybe a neighbor's gonna complain, or maybe something's gonna happen on their property and someone gets hurt, and then not only do they have the liability that someone got hurt, but also that they were in violation of a town ordinance which will not benefit them in a civil suit. So can we make sure that everyone is in compliance and we have drones going over Acton? No, we can't.
Yeah.
So if your question is, could somebody maybe get away with this? Yep, they could.
Yeah.
Same as we have speed limits and people still speed.
Oh, yeah.
Doesn't prevent it.
Doesn't
But-
prevent
but if you
murder either.
choose to speed and you have an accident, then you're probably gonna get sued for more than if you were going the speed limit. That's all I can say.
Well, all right.
All right.
I guess on this ordinance here, my concern also is from the aspect of the operational fire extinguisher. Okay, you have a rental property. Something happens, nothing major or big, and the fire extinguisher is used. Okay, everything is contained, everything is done. So how do we know without any checking that there is a, as you call it, an operational fire extinguisher? So that kind of presents a problem. I understand what you're saying from the fact of when it comes to the beginning and the fire chief comes in and does his inspection, everything is fine. But, you know, you got mischievous kids, you have whatever that might spend a fire extinguisher. Okay, so that would be my concern. How do you make sure that for every family that rents on short-term basis, that the fire extinguisher is operational? So that's
Do you have
one
any
concern.
suggestions?
Other than having an inspection, no, I don't.
These are just guidelines that we're asking for people to follow. They're not being,
Right, but if the property owner is not available and he's renting 1 week after another, that, you know, that at some point there may be that issue.
Yep.
And I'm just bringing that up.
Yep.
All right.
Could be.
And as far as making it an ease for the ordinance and to read under H, I think that,
I don't know about, yeah, I know what you're gonna say. It's already supposed to be changed.
okay,
It was changed and then the wrong copy got sent out.
okay, as far as the Acton Fire Department chief, okay, cool.
But I already got it.
You're on it.
It's already right there.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, yep, thank you.
Steve Geranian. I've just got a couple questions on the egress windows. Egress windows are measuring the bottom light of the window. That's what an egress window is. They measure the bottom light of the window. And I think it's 6.3 square inches or feet or something. I've never seen a fire department go into a house without wiping out the whole window. They just take it out. And that would make a lot of windows that don't comply with egress windows plenty big enough to get in with a Scott pack and get a person out. That's just my concern, that it's being, there's a lot of these places that are older, and egress windows were smaller before codes were changed, and you can get out of a window if there's no window there. And that's my problem with them saying an egress window.
We have not said anything about egress windows, though.
I brought it up as an example when I said window.
We've said each rental unit shall have code-compliant egress or equivalent, so it
Okay,
doesn't have to be a window.
But an egress window is a certain dimension. And it's based on the lower light of the window. So if somebody has a window that doesn't comply with the egress, but you know the fire department's going to take the whole window out, egress doesn't really matter because it is an egress window if you take the whole window out. And that's my hang-up with that, because there's a lot of people that are going to have a big expense to change a window, whether they gotta change the siding on the outside or put in a different framing on the inside and so forth. It just seems like it's a little bit much to ask for that when you know that the window's gonna get cleared anyway. And I'm concerned that the fire chief comes in, he looks at it, he goes, oh, this isn't an egress window, it's not big enough. And you can't go out this way.
The fire department's function would be only to determine that there was a code-compliant means of egress, not egress windows. So if there's a door that they can get out, or if the window is not egress compliant, but the fire department looks at it and says exactly what you just did, well, that window's gonna be taken out, and once it's out, we could still get in and out, so it's sufficient, we're okay, then it should be approved.
Well, it should be, but it doesn't say it is. You know, it's talking about an egress window.
It is not, sir. It's
Or an egress.
egress. Well, are you suggesting that?
Egress has got to either be the window or the door.
Right. Do you
And
think that there should be at least one of those?
Absolutely, but I don't think it should be an egress by code. I think the egress window should be able to be knocked out and be an egress window. I mean, I can't remember exactly what the ruling was before. It was 5 point something for the lower light. They changed it to 6.3. Okay? So if he's going by, this doorway opens into a hallway that goes down to another hallway, I can't call that an egress because he could get cut off. So I've got to go to the window for the egress. And if I go to the window and the window isn't a code certified egress, then this building has to change. And I think that's unfair. I think that,
How would you suggest it be done?
I would suggest that as long as the window, when it's cleared, is large enough for a Scott pack to get in and out, and a person in and out, that would be compliant.
Isn't that something like the fire chief would determine?
Yeah.
When it's,
Yeah, he would, he would, but if he's got a hair across his bottom about something, he may not, because it's not written down anywhere that this clearing of the window allows an egress. That's all I'm saying, just like the smoke detectors. It says you have to have a smoke detector. Does that have to be battery operated, or does it have to be wired? You don't say. I'm assuming the battery operated.
Operational.
Okay, so
People
battery.
objected to them having to be hardwired, so we just said the thing's gotta be operational. Because there's plenty of people with them, they got them up there, the battery's dead, they don't know. So it's gotta be operational. So it's less intrusive, people don't have to take that expense of hiring an electrician to hardwire these things, they just have to change the battery if the...
Yeah, you have to tear the whole house apart to wire it in.
Well, you look in this room here, all the wiring's right on the surface of the wall, so...
Looks great. Very professional.
Well, it's an option, it's a cheaper option.
Yeah, but this isn't somebody's home.
Well, we spend a lot of time here, I don't mind.
Like a second home.
Well, you may think you do, but, putting EMT down on the outside of the wall and hooking your plugs up to that, that's fine. It doesn't matter. This isn't exactly the Taj Mahal. Somebody's home, they don't want wires coming down the outside of the house.
We want people to be safe, and
I understand
we're
that.
doing the best we can. We have to have some sort of, for the code compliant egress, we have to have some sort of baseline, so it's not just roll the dice and see if you get it.
I agree.
Baseline, so we put it in there. The smoke detectors, carbon monoxide detectors, I feel like that's very fair what we have. We want people to be
As
safe.
long as it can be battery operated?
Yep, it just says it has to be installed and operational.
Okay.
So it's less restrictive, so to speak, than what we had last year.
Yeah. No, you did make changes. There's definitely a case where you did some work to make some changes. Nobody's doubting that. It's just that, we know how things can get in the town of Acton if you don't have things written down. And, that's why we get our hair up when we get into some of these things, because we're looking at the bigger picture of everything happening. I think that's about all I got to say, but,
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Just a couple of things. Perhaps to clear up some of these questions for the egress, that maybe we could have Ricky weigh in as to what he considers an egress, an acceptable egress for this.
Sure.
And then that way, there's no misunderstanding as to what it means.
As long as Rick can get through the door.
Yeah, I think that's what it is.
It depends on the size of the firefighter too, though.
And it says code compliance smoke and carbon monoxide detectors. Now, when we were doing renovations on our home, we were told to put in hardwired smoke detectors. So I would assume that that's code, that they would have to be hardwired. Is that right, Jason?
No, but they're trying to make it less,
Invasive.
But it says code compliant, so that ties you in, doesn't it, to the hardwire?
I see where you're going.
If you're building a new place, then yes, you'd want them to be hardwired, but if you have an
Well, no, I
antique,
understand that, but, I mean, it's,
antique home and you want to rent it out,
we're just trying to bring some
disturb the
clarity so there's no confusion. It says code compliant, code right now is hardwired.
Yeah, I see, I 100% understand where you're coming from right now.
Just one second.
No.
So that way, at least,
I don't know how Acton's code to that reads, or if there is one.
Manufacturer's code.
I brought this up during one of the workshops. I helped an elderly friend on Cape Cod sell her home recently, and down there, anytime you sell a home, you have to have the fire department come in and inspect the smoke alarms and so, okay. So code compliant there is delineated by the age of the structure. So if it's pre-1973 construction, it spells out that battery operated is sufficient.
okay.
If it's a certain, so when you get up to, is the house like 5 years old or less, then the code is it has to be wired. Or if you have done a major addition or renovation to that 1973 home, then at that point, when you did that, you had to bring it up to the code for that particular time.
Right. I mean,
So I don't know whether Acton distinguishes code or code compliant with the age of the structure. But that was.
All I know is what,
And you're right, it should.
with my house was built in the 60s. We did a renovation. We were required to hardwire the smoke detectors. However, I mean, that's an expense that these homeowners would have, and code compliant, if I was forced to put in, I'll say forced for lack of a better word, hardwired smoke detectors, because to bring it to code.
Any new renovation, the new renovation has to be compliant. What's there, they're not gonna make you go gut your house to redo electrical.
No, I understand that.
Whatever you build from this day on needs to be code compliant.
But if code compliant in here, it means they have to hardwire it. They're still gonna have to call in an electrician.
Well, you just heard what Bernard just said.
Yeah. So, I mean, so we need to clarify that, basically, is all I'm saying is.
I agree.
Is that language actually the way we want it to read?
Yeah,
So, yeah, it might be code compliant for the year of construction, for example, but yes.
Yeah, so, I mean, that'll take away some of the questions, and also if we can get Ricky to weigh in on what he considers an acceptable egress, then that might put that to bed too.
make sure he's at the next meeting.
Thank you.
One quick question I forgot to ask. Would you please, when it comes to town meeting, that you have the monetary cost that it's gonna cost somebody to, what the permit fee would be, the application fee would be, what the inspection fees would be and everything else, so that people could understand that?
I can't guarantee that because that would be set by the select board, I believe, but I don't disagree with you. Ideally, we would have that information.
They got plenty of time. It's still,
Decision.
June's quite a ways away.
I
know.
can't speak for them. I have a hard.
I know, but I mean, that's always, I mean, we're a fee nation here in Acton. I don't know if you ever look at how many fees there are on Jason's little pad down there, but I think the last time I counted, 47 fees
Yeah.
in land use. That's a lot.
Yeah.
Jason needs to make money somehow.
I gotta eat.
I'm hungry too.
Yeah.
And that is why a lot of the fees were increased in the town, was to offset the cost of having a code enforcement officer. And the fees were set to basically pay the code enforcement officer. But obviously it's changed a lot since then. There was talk about a fine, and the assessment of that fine, going back to what was previous, you said, would you say that that fine will be set by the Board of Selectmen, or should it be in the wording of fines that's in our ordinance?
My opinion is it would probably track with what's laid out in the ordinance already. I think that that's already done, unless I'm confusing it with one of the ordinances that we used, you know, to develop this. What I remember from one or the other was, I believe, $100 a day for each day that you're not in compliance. But again, that would be something the select board would determine what if any fines are going to be imposed.
If the fine was in our ordinance, Benny?
Yeah.
Say this $100 a day thing, is that in our ordinance?
I'll have to look.
Then it wouldn't be up to the selectmen, it would be.
It would already be established. Yeah.
See the $100.
What page is that?
It's on, page 60 of 108.
60?
Yeah, under F. I think.
So the fine would be set?
Yeah, violations and penalties, any person in violation of any of the provisions of this, well, that says this section.
Right. That's in the...
Yeah, that is where I got it. Shall be deemed guilty of a misdemeanor, which that wording alone, the town can't, a misdemeanor is a criminal offense, and only a judge can determine guilt as to that. Any person in violation of the provisions of this section shall be deemed guilty of a misdemeanor, and upon conviction shall pay for the hiring of an individual trained to make inspection. Oh, this is noise.
Good neighbor.
It's just something to look at.
That doesn't
Benny.
relate to
It's just a concern.
And that also, but, all right, so why don't, for the sake of what we're doing tonight, I've made a note on the issue of fines, so we would need to know.
It say it might be already decided in there, I'm not sure.
Yep, and I'm not 100% sure either.
The other thing in here is references to the fire department doing inspections.
Yes.
And this is nothing against the fire department. But not everybody is qualified to do inspections, and so I would change any wording in here in reference to the fire department, to the fire chief.
Yep, we've done that.
Oh, you have?
Yeah, there
Okay.
was one place it was missing, but that was a typo.
Okay, because the one I have uses fire department.
Yeah,
So there's no references to the fire department at all in there?
It should be.
Just the fire chief?
Yeah, I mean, we haven't voted on that yet, but we discussed it at yesterday's workshop,
Yeah.
and that was what I was going to suggest to the board, because I agree with you, for consistency purposes, it should be either the chief or, you know, if he designates someone, but it needs to be consistent, and it needs to be somebody with the proper degree of training and expertise.
Right, because normally you would have a fire marshal do it. we have had chiefs, and I'm not sure Ricky's qualifications, but we have had chiefs in the past who are also fire marshals. And I have no idea what the difference is, but I've been watching all your meetings, and I've seen no conversation with somebody, say an agency, that rents these cottages out, short-term rentals. He does long-term rentals too, but, and I'm going to use Key Realty, for example. They are probably, I would dare say, probably the biggest renting agency that we have. And I know that they have rental agreements, obviously, that they've been working on for years, and they abide by them. So I would encourage the planning board, before you guys finalize this, to ask a professional what their experiences are and what they think would work and the things that they found that doesn't work. Because I can tell you 100 things that I don't think is right, but it don't amount to a hill of beans because I don't rent no property out there. It's just my opinion. And somebody like Elias Thomas, for example, he's a professional in this field. He's done it many, many years. And he might say, looking at this, that this is perfect, and that's fine. But I think it would behoove the town, and I think it'd be a lot more palatable if you had a conversation with somebody that really knew the ins and outs of these rentals. And I think it'd be good education for not just the planning board, but for all the residents to understand exactly what you guys want to do. And I got about another hour and a half of things to talk about, but I wanted to wait for everybody else to get up here and say something before I get up and talk, so I can either go sit down now, and Joyce said I had to go sit down, so, all right.
Joyce, just breathe it down your neck.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Since this seems to be suggestion time, the board that I chaired, the planning board that I chaired, we started this. And Ricky came in, we had a fire marshal come in. But I'm going to make it a little more personal. We've been here now 23 years. Before that, we rented, not here, closer to the coast, and we decided we didn't like the ocean, we liked the lakes. One of the things, although I did rent here twice when my child got married, I rented next door to us at a very unbelievable, 11 years ago, $3,000 for 4 days. Before I turned in the key, an employee of Key Realty came and inspected the place with me. So I do think if it's through an agency, that happens. One of the things she and I talked about, and this is a suggestion, and I think most of you have been to a hotel, and on the back of the door in the hotel, there's a little map. And it says, go this way, go that way. And you get to, and if you want to have a 8.5 by 11 with owner's name, for rentals and all that on it, easy to put up another See?
C.
A map?
Well, we just don't have a map, but it's
Okay.
property's 911 address, property owner.
Yeah, but beside that,
Yeah.
literally, 3 upstairs bedrooms, staircase over here, staircase over there, which way it goes.
I think we're
And
just
which
trying
way is not a blind alley. Other suggestion, because I know this is going to create a conflagration, I'll use that word. A firestorm. It would not hurt, we have books on fishing law, hunting law, this and that law. If there was a little pamphlet, go to Google, get on, clip things, whatever you call them, on the computer. Just, this is what you need in a rental. It's not, make it available to people, And because I think the money part of it is absolutely nothing. If you're renting out a place by the week, by the month, by the year, you may lose 1 week, you may lose 2 weeks, but you're still going to bring in money for 52 weeks. And if it saves a life, it's worth it. So, that's my 2 cents.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just out of curiosity, what is the town of Acton's interest as to whether the dwelling is insured or not?
The town, yeah, I mean, in terms of, does the town get drawn into, do we have to pay any damages or whatever if a residence is uninsured? No. I guess in terms of liability insurance in particular, as opposed to property damage, the public policy interest would be the same as people having liability insurance on their car. Somebody else could get hurt, and we don't want to see that happen.
And people that can't afford it or don't care don't get it.
Right, and they drive anyway.
That's correct.
And as I said earlier, we can't guarantee that that's not going to happen, but if that happens and someone is in violation of an ordinance, that's not going to bode well for them in a civil suit. It's going to make them, it's going to increase the likelihood that they're going to lose that suit and the damages will be higher.
So the purpose of requiring insurance is to punish the the homeowner if...
It's to protect the tenant.
But the tenant isn't necessarily protected, like their contents of their home,
Not their contents, if they get hurt. If that house burns and God forbid, they can't get out, somebody burns to death or gets hurt, they're in a burn unit, and that homeowner has liability insurance, we have helped ensure that there will be money for that person who was hurt. And you raised a good point, as to that person's belongings. Now, some people aren't going to like this, but if you notify your insurance company that you're running a rental property, I believe there are different thresholds, like you can maybe rent for up to a month a year and not pay any additional insurance. But if you say, I rent my house out for 6 months out of the year, they're going to require you to buy a commercial policy. And how does that benefit the tenant? Because then there is coverage for that tenant's property that's on the premises. Now, does the town have an interest in that? No, not particularly. I mean, it's better for the person, we're looking out for them, but right now, there are probably a lot of people who are not properly insured.
I was just going to say that.
Who are running a commercial enterprise, and they're not properly insured, and their claim might get denied. Now, Is it an additional expense? Yes, but you're running a business. Like Joyce was just talking about some stuff. Yeah, your profit's gonna be less, but you're running a business. How is that any different, in my view, from somebody that opens up a restaurant here or a convenience store? Do we regulate, does the state come in and regulate that food is the right temperature and so forth? Yes. Do they have to have insurance so if somebody falls down? Yes. Does it cost them money? Yes. Does it reduce their profit? Yes. But that's the cost of doing business.
Okay, so it's strictly on a business basis, not like as an individual homeowner, if I don't have insurance, that's up to me.
Right.
Okay.
Right. You can choose to assume that risk.
So
You're
it's
not
in the
doing
view
business.
of regulating it as a business?
You're not, yes, because it is running a business.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the difference.
All righty, thank you.
You're welcome.
Want to move on to solar panels?
All right. Thank you. So this one will probably be the most cumbersome, but maybe not as, well, okay. So let's start with page 2. And I think this is generated largely out of a concern that we don't presently really regulate solar panels. There's concern about, I think less concern about somebody having panels on the roof of their house for their own use, for example, versus are we gonna have solar farms? Is that gonna become more of an issue here in Acton without much, if any, degree of regulation? So, 3.2 definitions, owner, oh, I've got the wrong one. So, sorry. Okay. Page 2, 3.2 definitions. Solar energy system. A device or structural design feature for which the primary purpose is to harvest energy by transforming solar energy into another form of energy or transferring heat from a collector to another medium using mechanical, electrical, or chemical means. Solar energy system accessory. Solar energy system generating power for an on-site consumption or to offset electrical use for on-site accounts shall be considered accessory to the primary use when it is incidental and subordinate to the principal use or structure located on the same lot. Excess energy may be fed back to a public utility. So I think basically the heart of that is we're talking about on-site consumption primarily versus selling the energy, and that the principal use of the site or structure is not the solar energy system. It is subordinate to that. So like a panel on a house or a panel in the yard of a residence. Okay, next is solar farm large, a solar energy system roof or ground mounted, how do you pronounce that?
Photovoltaic.
How?
Photovoltaic.
All right. Array, which generates energy for off-site accounts and has an array including panel area and interpanel space of 2 acres or more. So we're getting into the size and that it's for off-site accounts. Solar farm medium, solar energy system roof or ground mounted with the word I can't pronounce, array, which generates electricity for off-site accounts and has an array area, including panel area and interpanel space smaller than 2 acres. solar energy system, 5.29. The purpose of this section, 5.29, is to allow for the construction and operation of solar energy generation systems by establishing appropriate standards to ensure safe, effective, and efficient use of solar energy generation systems that are compatible with existing surrounding uses. 5.29.1, general standards. Accessory solar energy systems, medium solar energy farms, and large solar farms must obtain all applicable permits from Acton's code enforcement officer, including but not limited to building and electrical permits. B, accessory solar energy systems, accessory solar energy systems, medium solar farms, and large solar farms shall be subject to the standards of section 5.11, good neighbor standards. 5.292, solar energy systems generating power for on-site consumption or to offset electrical use of on-site accounts shall be considered accessory to principal use. I just want to ask, given the length of this, is this actually helpful for me to read this for you? No.
This is really...
Yeah, it's a long
Okay,
one.
it's long, so unless anyone wants me to read through it, I'm thinking maybe it's not the best use of time.
I'm missing everything.
Will this be on the public hearing?
There'll be another hearing the end of May.
No, beginning of May 5th.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes, it will be.
On my flash drive, it's missing.
Right.
You would have time, yeah, it's a lot to absorb. The benefit for us, frankly, is to get additional ideas and comments and perspectives like we did on the other ones tonight. And it may be that this is too much for you to even do that. But I guess I would say if anyone has any general ideas about, is this even necessary, or I think it's overregulated, or whatever, that would be helpful. And if you go home and read it between now and the beginning of May, and develop concerns or feedback, please come and tell us. Does that make sense?
Yeah, or you can even stop by any meeting, and let us know. Not a big deal.
Yeah, it'd be better to do it before that hearing, because we don't really change it that much after.
We'll be here next Thursday.
Yeah, if you come in before May 5th, it would help us that way, because we won't have the changes.
Yeah.
If people want to have any comments, we have a meeting next Thursday at 7. You're more than welcome to.
And there's a workshop on Wednesday at 3.
Will you let, participation?
I'm sorry?
Do you allow participation? Like if someone comes to watch, do you
To the
allow
workshop? No one's asked, but frankly, I would say yes. If they,
Yeah, we do.
I would just say this, if it's to talk about the construction of it and so forth, yes. If it's just to voice opposition or pro, that, I would say save for
Suggestions
the
would be
town
good.
meeting, but suggestions about changes, yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely. So,
Okay. Do you do electrical permits? No. Then why is it in here?
So the state will regulate commercial
Right.
electrical permits. I don't know, I don't even know.
Okay, but it does, that's what I thought, actually. It says acting code enforcement officer, including.
General
So that's, the state does that. And I've done quite a bit of reading on this. At one point, under C, on which I believe is 1, 2, 3, page 4, it says a maximum height of 25 feet from ground level to the highest point when it's lifted to its maximum, when the panel's up. how tall can a house be?
35.
35. So you can't put this on a house?
That's for ground-mounted ones.
Ground-mounted ones, because I didn't see anything for house ones. And the only other suggestion, and Bernie, it was the last sentence that you read. I think the sentences are very cumbersome. And if there's a way to use the KISS method, maybe a little bit, just less cumbersome.
Yep.
I think it would go a long way. Again, having experience with our first solar farm here, we did not have this. We tried to get help and do as much as we could, and then COVID hit.
Yeah.
There is a lot to be covered, but, I think, well, even on the first one, solar energy systems accessory, home solar energy. Why not call it home? If you're putting a home solar energy thingy on your roof, why not call it home?
You want a garage, detached garage, it could be on a...
Well, yeah, but it's
Well, it
home
could be on a
use.
commercial building too.
But no, I know, that's exactly what I'm saying.
Solar energy accessory, it could be,
But
It's
then
powerful
separate it.
on-site
Then separate it. Because if it's home, it's one thing. If it's commercial, it's going to be something else. And it would make it clearer, I believe.
yeah, it is kind of,
It's very cumbersome,
yeah.
the whole thing. But just a suggestion, that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we should, if somebody noted that.
I am right now.
On number 3, dimensional standards, we don't specify that the 25 feet is for ground-mounted arrays.
Exactly.
So we do need to make a note that it needs to be specified, because this does apply to solar panels on the roof of someone's building right now, unless we address that.
What was it, which number was that, Gavin? I'm just trying to take
I'm on,
notes.
dimensional standards. There's no page numbers. It's in the middle.
Fourth page,
Yeah.
under,
It reads minimum lot size 5 acres.
Right.
Blah, blah, number 3, maximum height.
Yeah.
and it doesn't say it's,
For ground-mounted, yeah.
Maximum height for ground-mounted arrays or something would probably, we need to add.
This language, this proposal was developed largely, almost exclusively by consultant, using already existing language from other jurisdictions.
So Ben Smith did this?
Tailoring it.
Yeah.
And he-
Okay.
and they-
Yeah.
Yeah, and so he'd done it for other things.
And so.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and so the way that one read initially was that it allowed that if someone generated even a minuscule amount of energy, that the panels could sit there. And I'm the one that brought up that, do we really want that? That just to be able to leave them up, that they just generate this minuscule amount versus deal with it and get rid of them. My point in saying that is, in other jurisdictions, there is a provision requiring the removal if they don't meet that certain threshold of production. So I would suspect there's a way of disposing, I would hope, but I agree with you, there is that problem.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So, anyway, I just wanted to, for that, I just wanted to throw that out there for whatever it was worth, because I didn't understand why it was in there.
Right.
Because of that reason.
Yeah.
So,
I had conversations with North Star Planning and as well as, I spoke to, the project manager from Revision Energy to see if this was a common practice. And pretty much what they had stated is if they're leasing the land from somebody, so if they're not producing electricity, someone's in trouble. Because if they're paying someone to use that land, and if they're not producing, if those panels aren't producing electricity, there's a reason why, and if they're not producing, they're gonna get it fixed as quick as possible. So the only reason they wouldn't be working is 9 times out of 10 is if they were decommissioning or they weren't, or they were out of.
Or they went bankrupt, or, yeah, they went bankrupt or whatever, yeah.
Or they go bankrupt, but that, you know, for these people, it costs a lot of money for these companies to come in and do the arrays and then provide the electricity, so they don't want to be not running, you know?
Right, no, and I understand, they're in business to make a profit, and, you know, so.
Not all profit, though. There are expenses.
Well, I understand, but you have to bring in more than your expenses, so.
Absolutely.
And on the next section, at the bottom, it says that the performance guarantee shall be kept in effect throughout the lifetime of the system, and the form and amount of financial surety will be reviewed by the town manager or designee every 5 years, renews or adjusted as necessary.
We had changed that, and it's not the town manager, it's the select board.
Yeah, because I would want to know who, you know, who has the necessary expertise to determine that, you know, whether it's sufficient or not, so.
Yeah, there is a calculation out there, I can't remember what it was, but.
Okay.
There is something that's per megawatt that's produced, and all this other stuff with the, decommissioning.
Okay, because I know that as a layperson, you know, anyone, I mean, anyone could be you know, get elected into a select board position, and they won't necessarily have this kind of expertise, and that's something that we should be relying on a professional to determine that, not just lay people.
Yep, I agree.
Yep. There.
Yeah.
Okay, so those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you.
Designate, yeah.
My biggest concern with this renewable energy is the fact that the panels and even windmills are not recyclable. And there is no way to get rid of it. We don't know where they're gonna be disposing of it. We don't know how that's gonna be happening. We do know that the lifespan of the panels are between 12 to 15 years. Okay, so, and I understand that the town of Acton has gone into a contract with the solar farm for 20 years. Okay, within that time span, there may be something that come up where we're able to dispose of them, send them back to China where they're made or whatever. But I think that also on one aspect of it is when they're no longer of any use, to kind of ensure that people just don't arbitrarily sneak them into the town transfer station, you know. So maybe to have some vision or something to make sure that doesn't happen.
Yeah, dispose of them correctly.
Right.
Doesn't say anything like that.
Right. So, I mean, right now, there is no method of disposing of them.
Well, there is a method, they put it in the landfill.
Right, they bury
A
it.
method.
They bury it.
It's like the,
They drive it and bury it.
mills, they bury all the turbines with those.
They can melt those down.
So, I mean, I don't know if people realize the amount of resources that have to be gone through in order to create these panels or to create the windmills.
We're not saving anything.
Yeah, but I mean, it's huge in amount to the, I believe it's 5 to 7% of energy that is being produced by this new renewable energy. So, I mean, that's one of my major concerns from that aspect of it.
That's a good one.
Yeah, let everybody go first.
You should've went first.
No? Jeez, they gonna start booing me. Okay, let's do it and get it over with. I don't understand, why this not off-site, a structure that wouldn't be on a building, it wouldn't be on a roof, for all the different districts, why that wouldn't just be CEO review, and why it has to be a conditional use permit with the planning board.
Oh, you must be on the land use chart, Dennis?
Yes.
R4, the R4?
On, isn't it here, guys? What is that? It's all conditional.
These were, we didn't change any, that was already existing in our ordinance right now. That was not a change.
That's, yeah, if you look at E and F, that's everything we have in the ordinance right now, renewable energy installed on an existing structure and renewable energy installed on a non-existing structure.
Yeah.
Non-solar.
I think you should.
The change that we have proposed is, right now, is to put non-solar into those E and F, just to differentiate what the new work that we're doing now.
I guess I understand what you're saying, Gavin, but my question is, I gotta do this. Jason is, well-educated. And he's a professional person, that we've hired. And I would think that if it's a renewable energy on an existing structure, he has more than the capabilities to review that and approve it. And a non-existing structure, he has the same capabilities.
I think the issue is that there's no scale, so renewable energy installed on a non-existing structure could be 25 acres of windmills.
Yep.
Not in...
So potentially...
No, because you have your medium farm, Gavin, and you have your large farm.
Well, no, that's solar.
That's solar.
So these are...
E and F are renewable energy non-solar, like windmills, hydroelectric,
So we
any type
added
of...
non-solar to E and F.
Okay.
But if we can...
But it's the same thing,
maybe there's a way we
though.
can make it more clear to the...
But it's the same thing, because if these people wanted to put up a windmill,
Well, if they wanted to put up...
he's perfectly capable of doing that inspection himself.
Well, I'm not sure.
He's a lot more qualified, and this is no disrespect to anybody, but he's a lot more qualified than anybody that sits on the planning board.
Well, I think the difference here is that the planning board more readily has the authority to ask the applicant to make sure that the tower is engineered to the specs needed, that the tower's strong enough, these sort of things.
So would do code enforcement.
Well, he could, but, right now, this is what we have, we're not proposing this, and we could change the, Cs to, well, we could go either way, honestly, we could go CO review, or we could go site plan review, because some of these projects could be massive.
But not on a non-commercial, it wouldn't be.
Well, but this does cover commercial renewable energy projects that aren't solar.
No, I appreciate that, but we're talking bigger
Scale of the
projects.
thing could be anywhere from one turbine to acres of turbines.
Yeah. I just think that, number one, it could very easily end up costing the residents more money to be able to do what a lot of goals are, to try to protect the environment, cut down on fossil fuel usage and things like that. So yeah, I appreciate that the non-solar stuff, but it's still the same thing, except for disposal, because everybody knows where all the hazardous waste goes when you dispose of it, like asbestos and all that. It all goes over to Rochester.
On the Hebo-Hibo Road.
Well, the Hebo-Hibo Road. But what I'm saying is, if you're gonna do this, then you need to cover all of your renewable energy sources. I mean, where I live, for example, I would say the wind average is 15 miles an hour every day of the year. Why wouldn't I, not me, but why wouldn't somebody want to put up a windmill for power? Other than the fact in here, I couldn't, because you can't put one up in resource protection. And again, it should be covered that if it's already a residential use, you should be able to do that. And if your roof line isn't going the proper way to get the southern exposure, and you want to put up a structure to put that on to be the most efficient, you should be allowed to do that also. And that's just my opinion. Thank you.
Thanks. Anything else, or?
I think I'm the first speaker, and I'll probably be the last.
We don't want him to hold that title, but. I don't know if anybody has gone down 125 and they have that one, that house that has that panel that follows the sun.
Yeah.
I mean, just looking at it, you know that that's more than 25 feet.
Right.
You know, so if a resident,
We have talked about those in our meetings.
Okay, so if a resident, I mean, you have heights on this, on here. If a resident decides to put the structure like that up, just for their own personal use, not a small farm or any of that aspect of it, then would that be a restriction on that resident if it can only be 25 feet?
I don't think those panels are much taller than 25 feet.
Oh, yeah, when it's following the sun, it's at peak, I'm pretty sure it's more than 25 feet is really not that much. Like between from me to you, it's almost 25 feet.
I think they're all designed kind of by the wattage you want them to supply you with, but yeah, over there by the blueberry farm, there's a panel right there. That's almost exactly the same thing. That one is about 25, but if you get to the ones in Rochester, off 125 by Lowe's, those are a lot taller.
Yes.
Because they're generating more power. That one over by the Blueberry Farm is more like the one we're talking about, I think. It's smaller. It's designed for a house instead of a commercial.
Well, the one on 125 is also designed for a house, so it's not commercial.
The ones I'm looking at by Lowe's that run the, what is that?
Anyway, they got those height restrictions on right now.
Staples they got those active solar panels.
I believe paragraph 2 at the top of page 3 restricts the ground-mounted accessory.
I don't understand that.
Solar energy generation system to be 25 feet.
Yep.
Jason, question for you. Now, this takes inspection from you. I know this, for the sake of clarity. I have one daughter who's a director for the solar company here in town. She's not in town, she's in Vermont. I have another daughter who just had solar put on her house in Connecticut. And she wanted just a particular kind, she didn't want it to be obtrusive, covered a lot of space. And before they could put the solar panels on, the building inspector had to come out and inspect their roof. And they had to have a new roof put on.
Yeah, we haven't
with
got-
bigger.
we haven't-
Is that gonna be covered, for safety factors, is that gonna be covered where, you know, inspections of that sort happen?
You know, I haven't done any inspection, I haven't done any like that. All I've gone out is and verified disconnect and things like that, and that's, it's operational.
Yeah.
It's a good point, though. It really is.
Well,
I've heard of other towns.
the previous CEO would do that, because he had my neighbor hire an engineer to make sure their roof would take the load.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I wasn't made aware of that, so when, yeah.
That would
Yeah, but
be
if
a
someone's not
structural-
gonna hire an engineer,
No, well,
You
thank you
know.
for pointing that out.
yeah,
It's made my job.
just make more work.
No, but I obviously, I didn't really, so.
You could always charge
Joyce,
another
was
person.
I
that
took
the,
guidance with somebody else on how to, on the inspections on that one, and they
was that
informed me.
the town or city's requirement, or the company doing the installation? Because to me, that's a liability issue.
Norwalk, Connecticut.
Okay,
The town
but
not.
the town required it.
Yeah, yeah.
Because to me, the company installing the panels, if they put them on someone's roof and it collapses.
Oh, yeah,
They've
of
got
course.
quite a liability there.
Of course,
Yeah.
of course it is.
But
But you know how liability goes, Bernie.
What's that?
You know how liability
Oh,
goes.
believe me.
You know, we've talked about things like the nightclub fire, and
Yep.
it went from here to there, to there, to there, all the way down to the city.
Yeah.
So the way liability
Yeah,
can happen,
It's,
it snowballs, yeah.
yeah,
So it was a requirement.
no, it's a good idea. I mean, I appreciate the point.
Yeah.
Very much.
What I would like to do on the record is that myself, Dennis Long, did his best to keep this meeting short.
Talk back to us.
Other people took it upon themselves to lengthen it up. That's all I just wanted to say.
That's fair, that would be on the record.
So if you guys have any, like, review these things a little bit more and you wanna come back,
We can talk about that right after.
you're more than welcome to express your, some more concerns.
There's more to talk about.
Yeah.
What did we say, Thursday or something like that? It's not really a public hearing, but.
There's a workshop
Workshop.
this coming Wednesday at 3.
In my email, you guys probably, you can get right on the Acton website. If you have any concerns or you want to just throw out some comments, feel free to do that also. And everything will be, you know, we'll take everything into consideration. And obviously the planning board, I think, accepts all your comments and information to help make their final decisions. So, thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Well, end the, public hearing now. Thank you for coming out.
Watched it. We're ready to
Bring them
go.
in.
All right, next up on the agenda is,
Where'd Ashley go?
Bathroom probably.
Don Waite, greatest practical extent, 127 Stonewall Drive, 128-003. And Tyler Matthews is from Lake Living Consultants.
Go one down, put one up.
Where were we?
You guys asked for some info. One of them was a plot plan of the back lot, which is a completely different lot, so I don't think that matters at all, or I know it doesn't.
Doesn't.
You wanted the deed as well, which I have, but again, I don't know, I was talking with Jason and
I guess my question, what is your guys' interest in the deed for? There is no, because that's my office, that's not the planning board's.
We just needed proof of ownership.
Okay.
That's one of the things
Yeah.
required, as long as you got it, Chief.
Yeah, no, that's stuff that trickles through my office. So what we're here for strictly.
I don't think, someone was Jason.
I wasn't here, so.
Yeah, that's what it was.
I wasn't
I was like,
here, and so I think people were asking questions that actually pertain just to my office. I mean, it's good for you guys to know and all that stuff, but we're here for the location of the building, and if it can stay where it is, or if it doesn't meet that requirement. So, that's kind of where that one, why he just said that.
The only other thing, I wanted to know where the septic tank was, but I know where that is now.
yeah, I mean, the building can't go back or forth, so it was gonna
Right.
stay there, yeah, so.
And the septic would play into it if they were if they were planning on redoing their septic and stuff like that, but if that septic is functional and still operational, that's kind of, but the,
I think the biggest thing was we wanted to make sure it hadn't been expanded by the 30% or by any percentage since 1989, and he hadn't gone over that with you, so we couldn't really make a determination on anything.
Which I sat down with him and we went over that, and
You did go through whatever we have, and
And that, again,
no permits for decks or anything were granted during that time?
no, everything was all good.
Everything was before 1989?
Yep.
All right, so you did your calculations here. And, what did you come up with for your proposed new coverage, impervious surface coverage of the lot?
That was another thing, I'm not sure if Jason wanted to step in on that, but, I mean, I'm willing to make a sacrifice, but I don't know if impervious is something I think it's, the planning board is more just best practical location, like when I read the description of the job duties. I know in the
We
past.
pretty much go through it every time. It's something.
No, I know that, but
It's something that the applicant can do to help out the town and do for the board, We pretty much go through it every time. If you're over the 20%, when the building is when the lot's completely redone, you should be trying to get compliant with the code with the 20%, just like the side light lines where you're gonna move in from the 5 feet to the 10 feet. It's pretty much just like that.
All right,
It's something that Jason should be asking you to do, but he wasn't here, and I always make sure that it has been asked to be done because it's very important for lake quality that.
do you think that should be, I mean, side note, added to what it says in the ordinance of what you guys should look at, or?
Well, no, because what's in the ordinance is pretty much, state verbiage about best practical locations. This is just, you have 30% impervious lot coverage, and you're not supposed to have more than 20%, and we asked you to work on evaluating that, and I think, I don't know if it was Bernie or John did the math last time, it was John.
John.
Did the math last time, and if you got rid of this concrete retaining,
Yeah, I have it
concrete area
right
in the
here.
front, which you said you would be willing to do, we had you down to something like 29% if you did that, and then there's, other impervious areas around that aren't even the building itself that could be reduced.
Yeah, I'm willing to make that 30 by 28 concrete pad, a concrete patio, a pervious patio.
Yeah.
Which drops it down to 29%.
Yeah.
Which is what we talked about, and I'm willing to do that.
What was the size of that area?
30 by 28, which is 840 square feet, which drops it down to 29%.
Yeah, I think that's what we talked about.
It is exactly what we talked about, from 37 to 29.
Isn't there something on the left, this side?
is it the patio?
Well, yeah, on the left, he's crowding the neighbor's lot line and
Right.
it's supposed to be back to the 10
Lakeside, yeah.
feet.
Right, this.
Is there a section in the ordinance specific to applications for greatest practical extent?
Yeah, yeah.
Because I'm not finding it. Where is that?
It's, if you wanna look at page 5, 6, 7.
Does that work though, if dropping that down to 29% like we talked about?
I think
Yeah.
so. I think that's a great thing to do to
Yeah,
help make it more conforming and, it moves your impervious away from the lake, which we like.
yep. Perfect.
So if you're, Bernie, you see that?
I do, thank you.
We have, expansion in shoreline district or resource protection district within shoreline zone, and then reconstruction and replacement and relocation. So all those kind of come into play.
Yep, okay, thank you.
thing is. You guys talking about right now?
Yeah, but it's just those are all of them put together. If you have the big survey, you can see kind of what's going on, but I'm taking the large one in the front, which is 30 by 20, which is 840, going from 37 to 29. Oh, this thing right there. Which is what they talked about last time and asked if I could do. Does that work then, or just, that's what we talked about all last time, so I was hoping could push forward.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, in terms of the reducing your impervious is, a good step in the right direction. I don't think you necessarily have to do any more than that. And you're proposing to leave it in the exact same location?
Yeah,
it's a demo.
It can't go any closer to the lake and, you know, you can't really go closer to the road. It's in a, pretty much a landlocked situation.
Right.
So, and that road creates a separation for this one.
Yeah. Now, what was your distance from the high water mark?
Whatever's on the survey.
Well, it's kind of small.
I know I gave you guys big prints last week and you guys kept them, but, 30.9 and 23.7.
Where's the 20?
That's from the road.
Oh, yeah.
23.7 from the center of the road.
Non-conforming both ways.
Yeah.
So 30.9 feet. Okay.
He's not expanding out, he's gonna go, if he does do anything, he's going up.
Yeah, I can't go.
Because he can't go any, okay.
Well, he's gonna get off of the, lot line from 5 feet to 10 feet on the left-hand side, so to speak, when you look at the map.
Does that work?
So he's gonna move off, he's gonna,
I mean, I don't know, we just talked about it the whole last time, so I was
Yeah.
confused. I got everything that
so
we asked for.
he's gonna be more conforming on the side lots, by trying to
Sitting here for
maintain the
an hour.
setbacks. And then other than that, he's not getting any closer to the water, he's not going back. So he is bringing it to more conformity as well as revegetating. That patio.
Just waiting for everyone to finish reviewing the language and we'll...
So I just want to make sure I understand. So this is a non-conforming structure.
On a non-conforming lot.
Yep, and you want to tear it down and build a new one that will not be any less conforming than the
It
existing.
will be more conforming because it's,
Any less?
oh, any less, okay, yeah,
Okay, thank you.
sorry, jumping the gun on you.
You have to say it to yourself slowly, because it is confusing. Less, more, non.
Yep, okay. So,
It's like calculus, but language
okay, so
calculus.
I'm not seeing anything that precludes this. Then.
Huh?
I am not seeing anything that precludes what's being proposed. Because it's
No,
more
as long as,
conforming, it's
as
not.
long as they haven't been expanded since 1989.
Right.
Yep,
They're allowed to expand the 30%.
right, okay.
My dictionary is still trying to figure out what precluding is.
Yeah, I just nodded like I knew what I was talking about.
We don't think I know the meaning of all these words I used, do we?
Just sounded good in the movie.
Yeah. All right.
All right, yeah, let's see, where are we here? I'll make a motion that we accept the proposal for the greatest practical extent for Don Waite the building to be relocated no closer than 31 feet from the high water mark, and the impervious surface to be reduced from 37% of the lot down to 29% of the lot.
And I'll become conforming on the sideline.
Sure, you add that in there.
I will second the motion.
All in favor? 3. We'll give you 3.5.
It's more than I get most of the time.
All right.
I believe he is precluded from voting.
I give it to a choice.
So wasn't that worth the wait for an extra hour? And we saved you from basketball time.
Yeah, right. I got
Yeah, now
fat
you
being
still got
there.
your ACL.
Thank you.
Thanks for
Yeah, thank
coming
you.
back.
All right, Kevin, you wanna take a half an hour just to go through some of these?
Well, if there was anything the board wanted to discuss,
On what?
the proposed changes to the
Zoning
zoning
changes and
ordinance.
stuff. Since it's kind of, fresh in our minds and.
Right, maybe something that came up at the hearing that somebody wanted to go over further tonight, or...
I'll never bring up egress windows again.
Yeah, really?
I learned that.
Don't say that word.
Don't say windows.
I'll record just leave that and then I'll record when we're done.
The only reason why I said it is because when they had the fire, I had to put them in, so they're always stuck in my head.
No, it's fine.
Yeah.
No, it's just,
But, you know, you can open a door like the fellow said, and all of a sudden you're into a hallway. It's not an egress out of the building.
Say goodnight to Ashley.
Because that building, that hallway can...
I said, say goodnight to Ashley.
Good night, Ashley, thank you. Because that could get cut off, like you said, and then what do you do? But also, if you blow out a window, and it depends on the size of the firefighter, if you can't get out that, it's still not an egress window, so...
I think it's also that the people inside have to be able to get out.
Right.
They have to be able to get in.
Yeah, but if the firefighter's in there and it's the size of, who knows, he could be the size of Andre the Giant, how's he gonna get out a little window? It's still, that makes it not egress.
Well, then,
Absolutely.
95% of your bedrooms and stuff leading into a hallway or something like this, the one place that's gonna get cut off is the door. So we want the window. So,
Right. I mean, all mine have egress windows.
Yeah. Well, they should.
Right. It's up to code.
Yeah, we're trying to placate the public on that.
But I still don't see, honestly, on the rentals, how we're just attacking,
Oh, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
It's just, what they say.
So do we think tiny houses is set
The
as
only
is?
thing I had for,
Chart
was,
needed to be corrected, and that has been done,
right, and then D is a vehicle without motor
or
power.
motor.
Yeah.
And you know, this discussion doesn't make a lot of sense unless Ashley or Jason are here.
I know, well, that's, I don't understand why Ashley leaves in the middle of the meeting every time. This is, our secretary is not supposed to leave. We don't have another secretary now.
Okay, well, I noted the correction, and I will give it to them.
Well, we could just wait a minute until Jason comes back in.
Well,
Yeah, let me get him back in, because this is,
Yeah, he's not supposed to, well, he doesn't have to be here, but if he's acting as the secretary does. I mean,
What do you guys do?
yeah.
Yeah, your number, yes. I will, I gotta do these things first thing in the morning. I'll be, yeah, just his old business. He'll be in, on the 17th. Because he's going to
what are we on, tiny houses?
Yeah, he'll be.
Yeah, tiny houses,
Then there was a question about the manufacturing.
right. That's what I was trying to read my
okay, Jason,
handwriting.
so
okay, so
we're
page,
going through tiny houses.
Oh, and there was a question of, and in the,
No, we're not dealing with
yeah,
all
we're
that.
gonna change that.
okay, page 2, of tiny houses, item D.
I have all mine, I have,
Yeah, we're just double checking.
okay, yeah.
Motive.
Motor instead of motive.
Yeah, and then E, what do we want to do about the manufactured housing?
I mean, it's a great point of what they brought up. And this thing was right out of the state, though?
Right.
Right.
So
But
I think we can cross out manufactured housing
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
if it does not exceed
Manufactured
400
housing
square
doesn't have to
feet,
meet
it's not
town
gonna be,
code.
they're not gonna be
trailer
putting in a
that's-
double wide instead of a tiny house.
Right. And he is right, there are places that do quote-unquote
these.
manufacture them off-site.
Right.
You know what I mean?
These are all manufactured.
Yeah. Yeah, they get towed in. They're
Yeah.
telling you right there, this comes on a trailer.
Right.
So, yeah, striking out manufactured houses is,
I think that works. I'm not
Yeah.
concerned about that.
I don't, frankly, I think if that's the way the state enacted it,
No, we don't have to follow the state
Yeah, we-
verbatim. We don't. I mean, you look at our ordinance, it's full of little changes. The state like presents the guide.
Well, manufactured housing doesn't have to meet code, is that correct?
No, but you adjust all these ordinances to
I
what's
just worked in one,
particular to
put
your
stamps on
town,
'em.
right?
this is not an ordinance, this is a statute. What the state is providing, I'm gonna take a look and see.
Well, we don't have to adopt it verbatim. And I know that's what you're querying, but
I think if you leave manufactured housing in there, it'll get shot down. It'll not be voted in.
oh, I don't think so. I
don't
think
know.
there are people getting nitpicky.
I don't see anything right now.
I can get nitpicky sometimes. It's understandable. So I think those are the only two things we had on tiny house, right?
Right, because if we're saying it's gonna be code
Yeah, and then Dennis had brought up the whole thing about having it permitted, but
Well, Dennis will take any reason to attack the Resource Protection District.
yeah,
And this is not a good place for him to be
Well, it just
attacking.
doesn't make sense to me because all the other ones have N and they're in our ordinance, it gives us, but if somebody comes in and says, hey, I wanna put a tiny house on this vacant lot, it's in resource protection, no, you know.
But if they had a fire in the
And it's
little house
not, it
right
doesn't go, I don't know what was done in the past, but my intentions are never gonna be to give something to somebody and then not for the other person.
Right. Well, I
Are you
think-
gonna be fair?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, if we were very clear about that, if they already had a residence in the Resource Protection District, they wanted to add a tiny home to it, it would be considered an ADU, and then you would have to look at what we have for ADUs, and, whether or not it's allowed in the Resource Protection District and go from there.
Honestly, I don't know why line E would even have manufactured housing.
Well,
Because it doesn't, manufactured doesn't have to meet
to
code.
possibly find out the answer to that, because the state
Because you get a Florida,
differentiates tiny houses
ceiling and floor
from
windows in a
manufactured
manufactured home, and they don't have to be
homes or houses.
tempered.
And so, I want to find out what that might be.
We could do an easy one. The structures. Done. It's done.
Were there any?
No changes.
Relative to structure. The fellow, what was his name, said something about,
Murray? You had.
The wastewater disposal system. Oh, yeah, that's right,
Mr.
yeah.
Murray?
yeah,
He brought up it,
something about chapter 1000, but
yeah,
it doesn't really pertain.
septic tanks have to have a setback, so how can they
Yes,
not be
the curb
structures? But
Right, well, no, we're not talking about setbacks in this
yeah,
definition.
Yeah, it's like not talking about windows.
I could show them a picture of what they do with all the windmill blades.
Yeah, they bury them.
Yep. Miles and miles and miles of landfill.
I think they can melt those things down.
Yeah, you would think, things are huge.
All right, so did you guys move on to structure or something? No?
No, we're just.
Waiting on Bernie?
Kinda waiting on Bernard.
Yeah.
Kind of could,
But I think manufactured homes should be taken out.
I was really hoping he was telling us it was time for his bedtime. It's getting
No,
hungry.
it actually is. I wouldn't mind leaving.
Well, you're the one, you guys are the one who wanted to stay longer.
these don't have to be verbatim.
If we're right on that, though, Jason, the manufactured home,
Okay.
it doesn't have to meet code.
They have their own codes.
Right.
They
That's
have
why they
their
have the
own
stamps in their
inspections, and
closets.
and then you get a stamp in it, yes.
Yeah.
So that's exactly correct.
So they can have.
I go in and make sure the plumbing
windows, they don't
connections
have
are
to be tempered.
there and everything in the basement. But tiny homes won't have the basement, but I would go in and just make sure their septic connections and everything like that is suffice.
Not big enough to have an egress window.
But when everything else, yeah, Chris, you're right, it comes stamped pretty much, there's a placard saying it's.
Oh, yeah, it's like, if it comes in 3 sections, there's 3 little stickers in the,
Yeah.
in like a closet or some stuff like that.
Yeah.
So manufactured housing is defined by state law and does differ from a tiny house because it's a structure that's designed to be used as a dwelling, manufactured in a facility, then transported by the use of its own chassis or placement on an independent chassis to a building site. A tiny house has to be constructed on its frame or chassis.
What's the difference?
Yeah, just because it didn't get swapped to another chassis?
Well, the way I read that, a tiny house would have to be permanently constructed on a frame or chassis.
Right, it doesn't leave the chassis.
Right.
Whereas the manufactured.
And the manufactured home
Gets picked up and
does.
craned in.
Yeah, a
So
manufactured
that-
home comes in on a trailer and then
And
it's
then they
set
put it on a chassis, and so that is why it's different, and that's why it's in there.
It's also different than a trailer because a trailer has wheels and you actually,
So it's not, so it takes 2 definitions, it's not being manufactured somewheres. It's,
Right, it's because it's manufactured housing versus, so, I mean, I think we can explain that. It doesn't mean that if it was, constructed in a manufacturing plant as a tiny house, that it's prohibited.
I mean, it just, a discussion that we really wouldn't need to
you
have.
could explain it like those sheds that they transport on a trailer.
Oh, the Amish
Set on the site.
I think,
Manufactured homes done the same way. It's brought out on a trailer, then put on a pad or a foundation.
So,
Right.
Right,
So leave it?
I think it would be fine to leave it.
okay.
I think you should, because it tracks state law.
As long as you can explain it.
All right, so we just need to change the word motor on that.
Yeah.
Okay,
I'm changing the,
okay, so now we're looking at definition of a structure. I don't think we had a lot of issues with that.
Yeah, he just wanted to, he was, just kept on saying chapter 1000,
Yeah,
what
for
the
the-
state says on it and all that stuff.
that's what I have for another chapter, whatever.
So I don't know if anybody wants to take some time and try to just look into the chapter 1000, I mean, I can too.
It said it explains the setback requirements of a septic tank, so.
Right, but this definition has nothing to do with setbacks.
Right.
So, I mean, I got chapter 1000 now, but I don't think it's really applicable to what we're doing.
There's more just to change.
There's more to this whole thing, so.
Oh, of course.
So
Sure,
then-
Right, that makes sense, I know what you're
Which
talking
one
about.
are you on? Accessory?
I think I do too.
Structure.
Structure.
I think that looks good.
Yeah.
I will go over 1000, at chapter 1000 anyway, and look at it, just, I haven't really spent
Good
much
thing to
time,
do.
I haven't spent much time with it, and I do know that it has some good stuff in there, and so it would be good for me to just review it anyway. Whether any changes get made, that's up to you guys.
No,
No, I said whether any changes do get made, that will be up to you. Yeah, I'll be quiet.
Oh, wait a minute. Are we on mixed use?
No, we're on
And
the
now,
Structure.
Yeah,
I think we're done with structure.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't know why I keep screwing
The
that
other
up.
quick one is dwelling units.
On mixed use, oh, I saw the word structures. Mixed use structures,
Yeah.
at the bottom of that page, mixed use structure, shouldn't that all be underlined? It's shaded and it's added, right?
Yes.
That should all
good
be
point.
underlined.
thank you.
And there was a comment, well, someone made related to the size of the structure. I had noted, someone said that,
On what? On this one?
yeah.
The size?
I don't know
Yeah,
about
for
that
some
one.
reason I took a note of it, someone saying that.
Yeah, I took some.
Well, when we had the public comment, relate to the size of structure. I don't know why I have it written down, I can't remember now.
Remember,
Well, the size is pretty open, really.
Right.
You know, it's gotta be under 35 feet tall and it's gotta conform to the, you know, can't cover too much of the lot, but other than that.
Yeah.
Right, I don't know why,
Next.
they'll come to you in the middle of the night,
yeah, probably.
tell them that.
Okay, and then definition of ADU,
There was nothing on that one. Nobody even came up.
right?
Welcome.
Mr. Perfect.
On ADU,
Clarified definition.
we already discussed this, that the comma before the word O should come out, but it's still
Before.
Or,
Yeah. that's
before
all.
or,
before
Scratched
or.
out.
yeah, so it's not that
That needs
perfect.
to be done.
That would have been fine anyway. Well, so you would not put a comma there if you were writing that?
Correct.
Right.
Right, 'cause it's only separating two options, it's not a list of,
Hey, I was never a good,
Don't brag about your work, because we find something wrong.
what is it, like and or, but nor, yet for, and so?
Yeah,
yeah.
All right,
Good old
so,
days.
regular English learning.
And I think it is a good idea to keep these definitions separate as two different proposed changes and not to roll them together as two definitions, because people might say, we don't want them to kill both of them just because they don't like one of them.
Right.
So I think it's good to keep them separate.
What are we talking about?
Definitions.
Well, a lot of times we just list all the
okay, I see what
changes
you're
as one article. But I think it's fine to keep it as two. Because there could be some, we don't want to lose both of them because one was objected to.
So I had a question for the ADU, accessory dwelling unit. I know we are only listing the change in A. Do we want to put all, like, A, B, C, and D in there, or do I just want to leave what the change is only?
You want to put those, probably you want to put those 5 stars underneath it.
Underneath it?
You see these 5?
Yeah, I see the stars. I didn't think
Just stick them at the bottom saying that there's more verbiage there.
Oh, okay.
So that would, that would,
I didn't know that was okay.
that's what someone at the town meeting, I was up there and somebody asked me, what are these stars about? Means they excluded something. I'm like, yeah, the whole beginning of the ordinance, like, but it was something they mentioned.
So just put the stars on it, you didn't want me to cut and paste A, B?
Oh, I can look at what we have there.
It's on page 66, I think.
Just the only
It
thing
just
is-
gives somebody a little bit more,
Get some context.
yeah.
I don't think it would be bad to do that. I mean, it would certainly fit on the page just fine.
Oh, for sure.
It's not gonna take extra paper.
I think it's a good idea to add it.
Yeah, because I mean, it just answers some people's simple questions about ADUs. It probably-
Well, that's what I'm trying to
Like in a
avoid.
hearing situation, yeah.
Well, what, I don't want, you know, so I don't want to be standing up there and then, well, what's an ADU?
Right.
Can you describe what this is, you know, that kind of lays it out for somebody.
Yep, I think it's good. Have some context.
Yeah, and basically, we're making it less restrictive by adding this change, so. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Still awake over there?
Okay, so what do we do?
We'll wake you up when we're done.
Rental?
Yeah, we went through the rental, because we don't have any really feedback.
I don't know, that's a long one, I don't know if I want to tackle that.
No, just,
No. All right, well, we could look at rentals and solar next Wednesday again, and then bring it back Thursday.
We could, yeah, I mean,
I think there's a lot of things to go over
I don't have
on
anything to
it.
talk about in the rentals too much.
No.
I mean, it's the
I love
same
our
old, the same
concerns.
old changes.
There wasn't much except making, specifying that's a chief.
right.
Yeah, I mean, I just jotted down like what everybody was kind of, him and like heading towards.
Coming in already.
I wasn't gonna say.
Okay, so,
I think we might want to add something about how often these things might be re-inspected. Because right now, we just have that they're gonna be inspected. It doesn't say, well, would
On
they
the
go back
initial.
yeah,
2 years.
every year, every 5 years, like what, you know,
Yeah.
or do we not care?
well, I will tell you, in Portland, you're subject to an annual inspection. Doesn't happen necessarily, but you are subject to it.
Maybe we should kind of put
So
verbiage that
it's
says
not a bad idea
that
to
you're
make it-
subject to it.
Subject to an inspection at any time.
Wink, wink, doesn't have to happen.
Somebody complains.
Well, and I think that makes sense, because annual inspection by the fire chief every year of every one of these things is gonna be too burdensome for him. But I think
That's the way we have
that
chief.
it would be good for them to know that he can come back, it's not like just one-time inspection, one and done.
Well, if somebody
He can
came
come
in,
back at any time.
somebody was renting and came in and complained about it, it would require a reinspection or
Yeah.
inspection.
Right.
It's a prompt for them
I would say,
to check.
subject to reinspection.
Annually.
It's a reminder to them to check the fire extinguisher.
Doesn't mean it's gonna happen, it just
I would
could be.
just put,
Right.
put subject to reinspection period, like not give the time frame at all.
Give you just
S
cause.
and owners.
I did have one thing on that code compliant smoke detector.
Yeah.
Couldn't that just be the manufacturer's code that this is up to the standards?
Well, the battery one's code compliant, isn't
Isn't
it?
there a code?
It's not code compliant to today's standards, but it could have been code compliant. So if somebody does a restoration, like I was trying to tell Leslie, if you're adding on to your house, what you add on needs to be code compliant to
Right.
today's standards. But you don't have to go back into the rest of your house and make everything code
But I'm
compliant.
just saying, this doesn't even say building code. It says
Right,
code
code
compliant.
compliant. No,
There is a code on that that smoke detector that says this is.
That meets
a-
required the standards
Right.
of,
I was thinking we use that instead of building code for the explanation because, yeah.
yeah.
That's a good idea, because that we want to specify that these detectors are up to snuff.
Yeah, because you can buy knockoffs. These aren't code compliant according to US regulations and stuff like that, that it meets this. Well, if you ask the fire chief, he could probably rattle it off what the code is. but-
On someone's life, you know? Hey, sorry about this
Save the nickel
$499 smoke detector, but your life's not worth that, so
Yeah,
we'll just
yeah.
buy the cheaper
You can
one.
only smoke 5
That
cigarettes
makes
before it goes off.
Right.
So,
You can fall asleep with 6 in your mouth and it still won't go off.
Yeah.
page 2, residential rental units.
Is a spelling error.
So, no, this one's on me, the paragraph above the 5.30. I'm gonna suggest the last sentence say, by any persons not related to the owner through kinship. under Maine law. Because that was the intent, that they have to be related, have a family relationship.
Well, kinship still doesn't cover adoption, right?
Well, it does. Under Maine law, domestic partnership would establish a kinship, adoption would, fostering would. So, the reason I'm bringing this up is to just say that they have to have a relationship under Maine law. Could be business partners, for example, would be a relationship recognized for owning an LLC together. And the intention was a family relationship.
So not related to the owner under kinship?
Through kinship.
Through kinship.
Under Maine law is my suggestion. And then 5.30A, I think you already mentioned, changing owner to owners.
Yeah. You want it owner, or you want owner with a parenthesis S?
Yeah, that's a good suggestion, yep. Well, no, actually, owners, it should be plural in either.
Right, it would
say owner of residential, you'd say owners.
The parentheses would be after the S.
Yeah, but you would never, grammatically, you wouldn't say owner of residential rental units in Acton. You would say owners, all owners must. It's grammatically incorrect.
Yep.
Right. Need an S there.
Yeah. Okay.
And then I got, H, I have, I did make the change, but again, it just got lost in the mix of the too many copies going. Determined by the chief of the Acton Fire Department.
Right, and that's true of
And there was
E.
It was E.
E was the other one too?
Yeah.
Chief,
Chief.
by the chief.
And then I think, the other notes I took, we've got to deal with like fine assessment and stuff, but those aren't
That doesn't have to
changes
happen.
for you to make yet, right?
Right, we could ask the selectmen to set a tentative fee so that we can answer the question.
Yeah.
Why not? They've been able to think about it since last year or so they should have, they've had plenty of time to come up with their prospective fee to cover the cost of the fire chief's inspection and the land use office's.
Yeah, we just usually do it would be just a $25 probably processing fee. And then if he's doing an inspection, where he finds what he deems necessary.
Right, it's another $25 for him or something.
But wasn't there another wording too that someone said or anyone that was trained?
Oh, yeah, we did talk about the chief or chief's designee.
Yeah.
Right.
Could be
The assistant
fire
chief.
marshal or the assistant.
Or it could be just a member of the staff of the fire department who's gone through the training with the.
Right, as long as it's somebody the chief
Because
recognizes
that
as
might
being
happen
qualified.
you're the person who does inspections for the fire department, go do it, because the chief's too busy.
Yep,
Doing chief stuff.
yep. Okay.
Chiefy chief.
So then, solar, page 2 of solar, under definitions, in that middle section, the bottom 2 paragraphs need to be underlined.
I got a bunch of stuff to do with this one too. There's formatting issues. You can see how, if you look at some of these, the format of some of this stuff, it's probably just something that happened with a glitch on North Star's side.
Got a question on F.
Which
How do you
one?
put a renewable energy installed on a non-existent structure? How do you install anything on a non-existent structure?
We're on F in...
The energy, right?
Well,
is that what you're on?
Means that when they put the energy, the type of renewable energy in, they're gonna build the structure it goes on at that time. It is kind of funny.
Oh, okay, I see.
What were you talking
Yeah,
about?
some people put them like build a.
They're gonna build the structure.
Yeah.
Page 2,
Yeah,
I didn't think.
Like they'll put, you know, 4
3.2
posts.
definitions.
corner,
Yeah.
paragraphs
set the
3
thing on
and
it.
4 need to be underlined.
okay.
Do it a lot on like, living off the grid type shows. They'll
so-
put something separate to.
Is article, does everyone, where there's a definition, does it need to say Article 3, construction of language and definitions? So if you look at, well, we don't have it on residential. Yeah, we do. So anywhere there's an added something, I'm wondering, because I need to put it on the land use chart.
You got it,
I mean, on the solar, it's not on here.
on the solar number 8, did you, take out the town manager?
Oh, yeah.
Sorry.
To select board.
Get you off track.
It's on the last page.
I don't know if it should be the select board there either.
It was, so we
Not sure who it
changed,
should be.
Well, didn't it say something about or
Select board or
designate?
designee, so the select board could designate it to someone else.
Well, it says town manager's the one who's gonna bring it up.
We don't have a town manager.
Right.
So that's the.
So be the select board.
Right, select board. then-
so we set the
I think
amount,
it could
so
be the-
Gavin, we set the amount, the planning board sets the, or you guys set the amount, and the selectmen still have to approve it.
Oh, sure.
So that's kind of where this is, town manager needs to go to the select board.
Correct.
Right.
Instead of, that bottom one needs to say select board, not
Yeah,
town
if that's
manager.
what you wanna do, that's fine with me. I'm just saying that it could also say planning board.
Well, they have to approve, so we're setting the amount at the very top where it says, the escrow to be approved by the planning board in the amount of 125% of the estimated removal cost. And then, once that's done, then the surety gets approved by the select board.
Yeah, I mean, if that's what you wanna do.
Well, I think that's just the process, I think that's kind of,
Well, I would think that we would look at it again, and we'd look at
yeah,
trends, and then we would come up with we'd say, yes, we need to increase their escrow because of inflation or yada yada, and we would put in a proposal, and the selectmen would have to approve our proposal. But it doesn't really matter. That's just my personal view. I think either way is fine.
No, I like your idea. Believe it or not. Just because of the way inflation is, I mean.
Yeah.
You look at it now, I mean, 2 years ago, that when you put something in, now we're at what, over 31% inflation now from 2 years ago? I mean, that's a lot of money
What if we can't get
in
rid
the
of
long
it?
run.
well, no, then that's the problem with taking cash escrow, is you got your set amount.
Yeah.
Right now.
Yeah, but
And
we
then
can always revisit
25
it.
years down the road, right now, so like the H road, it's set at $92,000. Well, 25 years down the road, $92,000 might not get you anything.
No, not even a
So,
new
but
car.
that's what they have set right now. And so, yeah, I mean, you go back to them and say, hey, you're gonna owe me another 15, 20, 30 grand, whatever it is, and they're gonna say, no.
Everything should be based upon cost of living increases.
Right. So it's definitely something to, I will put notes on it, and I know, North Star he's gonna watch this video. He said he was gonna pay attention, he wanted to see what their comments and stuff like that were.
Yeah.
Can you, also.
Oh, disposal
1, 2,
of the
3,
panels.
Page 4.
We can't do anything about the disposal. I mean, it has to be disposed appropriately, you know.
I was just one of the notes that I had.
Right, that was an issue that was brought up, was the disposal, but I don't think it's much to do with what we're doing, unfortunately.
I'll have to see someone bring the whole panel to the dump.
But page 4.
Well, they probably could from their home,
Right, but not like this.
2, 3, 4. Page 5, this would be something for North Star. Joyce brought up ground versus roof mounted, wasn't distinguished.
Right, number 3.
So that is something for North Star to look at.
So, yep, ground, yep.
Maximum height of ground-mounted arrays is 25 feet or something like that.
Yeah.
And are we gonna add anything about, like, another thing that Joyce said was how her daughter had,
I was surprised that nobody nobody brought up the minimum road frontage, unless they just didn't see it, you know?
Listen to page.
Yeah, there was a concern about the roof inspection, Jason,
are you gonna,
and the electrical permit being by the state, not the town.
Yep.
right? And I have heard of that in other towns, so like the code enforcement comes out and inspects the roof.
So,
Yeah.
That is legit.
so what, the reason why I didn't know that was because, well, I was never told, let's put it that way.
Yeah, that's
So I was like, hey, I gotta do, but I've also never actually had, since I've been here, I don't think I've actually, I might not have permitted anyone, but either way, I just didn't know, and it's good to know because,
Right.
Well, it's kind of like just when you're inspecting a structure being built and they didn't use trusses, they built their own rafters and you make sure that they're of the correct dimensions and the correct spacing for the snow load, wind load, blah, blah.
Right.
It's pretty much like that, but then you have to calculate in the weight of the panels.
Well, I just like,
but I'm not sure exactly how.
I'd like to know how somebody goes in there and does the calculations on an existing structure, especially sometimes if you can't even get inside that, you know, that, it's a crawl space.
Right.
You know? I don't like rats.
Oh, well, you're gonna end up like.
So, okay.
So I think the biggest thing with the solar energy still is the land use chart and getting this,
Is what?
the land use chart
Oh,
and,
Where is the electrical one? I know I've seen it, I just, and it's the very last one.
electrical permit,
it's on page 2, general standards A.
Gotcha. Maybe, so included but not limited to building and electrical permits that, well, because they might be required by the state if it's a
I
commercial.
don't think it's bad to leave it in there, I don't have a problem with
I
that.
mean,
well,
I just don't do it, so if I,
Just put state electric.
what if we added, well, what if we just said all applicable permits from the Acton Code Enforcement Officer and State of Maine, including but not limited to building and electrical permits? Then if Acton doesn't do electrical permits and the state does, it's covered.
Yeah, at that level, it's gonna be
included but not
state.
limited to,
The state does have.
State's gonna be involved.
detectives.
So after the word in the
Anything.
second line,
To the grid.
code, Acton's Code Enforcement Officer
yep,
and the State of Maine, comma, including but not limited to.
okay.
Okay?
Need to be underlined, do. I need to have the article.
So, okay.
So, where would I stick the Article 3 construction of language and definitions? Because I have it on every other proposed change.
Now, anywhere there's a definition,
So Jen, just right on top of three, not on top of the footnote section on the second page, it'd be on, right on top of definition?
yeah, because Article 3 is construction of language and definitions.
All right.
So,
But that footnote's new.
The footnotes
are for, or footnote number 4 will be new.
Yep, and I
You weren't, that was something that we had a discussion about the other day.
well, the footnote doesn't go with the definitions. Right, it goes with the land use chart.
Right.
Okay.
And the land use chart is 2.7 land use chart. And I think that's that's fine, R4. And then the footnote. What would be, oh, I guess so, okay, so it would be for ground-mounted systems that are accessory to other uses.
Then single-family and two-family
So like a
dwellings.
commercial use that
Yeah.
has a ground-mounted array, it's not a,
So if you look on,
still an accessory solar energy system, but it's for a commercial building.
yeah, if you look at on the next page, the C and D, and that's kinda, John felt there was some disconnect to that, and between that and the land use chart, so then there was some discussion with, North Star, Keith, McBride, about keeping it in, and he felt that it was necessary to keep it in, and, he pled his case, and it made sense, and so we decided to add this footnote instead of, I think, John even wanted to just get rid of the C and D, but now adding that footnote brings it all together.
What about that other thing that we're gonna talk about? We were gonna discuss it with this about, I don't know, it wasn't Bernie, it was John that brought it up about, say if someone's on the back lot and someone decides to put one of those up in the middle.
Oh, the shoreline zone.
Yeah.
So, the ground-mounted ones that was the concern was,
Was it John that brought it up?
Yeah, John did.
did you want the ground-mounted ones allowed in the shoreline zone?
I think that was part of the discussion, and we never really came to a conclusion. It was just,
Because it's starting to affect, it would be affecting
it would be the
views
same with the
and-
resource protection, the little ossipee.
I think you're getting a lot of kickback, that's an eyesore. And then depending on which way they're pointed, you got glare, reflections, everything else. I got a feeling ain't nobody on those lakes gonna want that, on that part.
But then you could have a small one that wasn't really that obtrusive.
If it was roof mounted is one thing, but if it's one of those
No, if
active,
it's roof mounted, it's higher up from the lake, it's more visible in a way, so.
well, but it's on the roof.
Right, it's not a new structure.
Yeah, you wouldn't want one of those active panels.
Right, I think it was more about
floating around out
the
there, but-
active panels.
Yeah, we talked, the roof line ones, you really don't see them when they're on the roof line. You know,
There's a
that-
term in construction, don't look up.
yeah. But I would think we'd have to designate that no active solar panel, ground-mounted units, but a roof-mounted one would work. But then you got Lakeshore, hardly anybody's got enough, clear space to put one up anyway. So I don't think it's, if you look at anything along the ponds, they're all got trees around them. There's no place to put
Well, I think
solar.
that's part of what we were trying to avoid, is that people
Start cutting.
would be taking down vegetation to put up these ground-mounted arrays within the resource protection shoreline, a little ossipee. And whereas if they put it on top of their house, we wouldn't have that issue.
Right.
And nix it all together.
Do these constitute, in this, is there somewhere where it points out that a ground-mounted is a structure? And so that somebody can't put
Well,
it
I
close to
think
the water?
that E and F of what we used to have, or what we have now, kind of addresses that in a way.
It'll become a structure.
If it's,
Well, structure includes satellite dishes, for example.
oh, they're definitely a structure, whatever the,
Ground mounted.
Yeah, because it's gotta be
Whatever.
physically, it has to be mounted into the ground, yeah.
yeah, it's,
Yeah.
yeah.
But a fence isn't a structure, and that's still mounted.
Right, but that's in that list of exceptions, so to speak.
I'm inclined to say no in the shoreline district. I understand all the rationale for it, but as we've seen tonight and on other occasions, sometimes the same individuals are proponents of a landowner should be able to do what they want with their land, and then revert to they want restrictions on certain things. So the only point my point in saying that is, it's very hard to know which way people will go. So, I mean, it's not about advancing a particular agenda. I personally don't have anything at stake with it. I do see, if we want to say common sense, that in a restricted area with water views and so forth, that people would want them probably roof only.
I think where you put your emphasis, like you said, the biggest thing is going to be the visual effects.
I think that if we took D, and at the end of D, somehow finagle in not allowed in the shoreline district, resource protection, and things like that, because I can't just go, if I go and change the chart, that gets rid of roof-mounted ones.
Yeah, could it be a footnote?
Well, we really gotta make the chart accurate, 'cause that's what people, that's kind of what.
Well, then I'd have to separate, I would have to completely separate roof-mounted systems versus ground-mounted. It would have to be a completely different, you know,
Why wouldn't an asterisk work?
because we don't have an asterisk anywhere else in the chart, right?
Well, not in that chart, but we do other charts. So, well, actually, we do. We added footnote 4 is gonna have an asterisk.
No, it's not on the chart itself. It'll just be R4.
Oh,
It has a special code.
Yeah, and then you go to the footnotes.
okay, I'm sorry. So what if, yes, same concept, but not an asterisk. So what if there was an R5 or whatever, 5,
Yeah, it would be,
You'd be R10.
whatever.
well, I think it would be nice to, yeah, all right, we can do that. But it would be cool if we could just make it part of R4 somehow.
So just add in, so instead of H being solar farm medium, H could be ground mounted. Are you talking about adding a whole nother block in there? A whole nother column or row?
Saying that instead of having 2 different CEO reviews in the renewable energy, if we could somehow just have one, just R4, and that it would be covered in there somehow.
In the actual footnote?
Yeah. Is this already because the footnote you have now, you know, differentiates different types of systems. Because it's required, site plan review is required for ground mounted systems that are accessory to other uses, to uses other than single and two family dwellings. So you were already talking about that.
So you would say then just add verbiage, ground mounted. Systems are not permitted in shoreline district.
Shoreline Little Ossipee and resource protection.
Ground mounted. And Little Ossipee, yeah.
So ground-mounted accessory solar energy systems are not permitted.
Why, this is a question for myself, why not Little Ossipee? Isn't that,
Little Ossipee, it's
Saco River corridor?
Yeah, it's basically just another shoreline zone, it's just a little bit, it's 500 feet instead of 250.
Yeah, I'm just asking questions.
It's just a sensitive area.
Yep.
And where you have to go, to do something like that, you'd have to go.
Through the Saco River corridor.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
but, good for, yeah, okay, I'm fine with that.
Okay.
All right, well, we definitely
So-
covered a lot of ground.
I have one quick, I know it would be an unpopular question, but I thought that we talked about, as a board, why we didn't have North Star here tonight was that we were just gonna bring forward what changes we wanted made.
As to, well,
As to mixed use and solar.
Everything, yeah. And so.
Well, and then we're gonna send the other ones to them, I guess, too, at this point, pretty soon.
Yep.
Just for review.
Yeah.
I felt like it didn't make sense for us to be paying consultant to listen to the audience go on and on
Well,
about.
that's my point.
That didn't pertain to why they were here.
So now he wants to sit and look at the whole tape.
no, I've already jotted down when he can, look. I'm gonna have, he just wants to see what they said about it. So I told him,
Well, he's trying
I
to make
jotted down 1 hour and 30 minutes into
Get hours.
the video. You can, that's where he
Where
can
they
review.
get to what
Yeah,
he's working
We
on.
got to solar.
so that's, I don't need him
He needs to
reviewing
review the tape.
3 hours of
We
tape,
can
so
just give him the
it's gonna
notes.
Exactly.
it's gonna be an hour and a half into the video is when they do it, and then if he wants to come back at the last, I don't remember what it was, but we talked
Bring up that
about it.
much.
I would just give them the notes right there. This is the change, this is the area designated, X, Y, and Z, and that's it, because we don't need them 3 hours watching the tape. Oh, reverse, watch it again. Just like when we had the,
Yeah, well, that's
feel like it's necessary.
why I wanted to bring it up, because I
yeah,
didn't see the
just like we
point.
get a presentation on solar, it takes an hour, that just eats up time, kind of. That was kind of the, I don't know, I think we'll just save him some legwork.
Yep. So, I've been waiting for you guys to make a motion to adjourn for a while now.
Yeah,
Keep on waiting, because
We're just gonna keep rolling.
Why do we have a meeting, next week?
we'll order pizza.
on Thursday or
Wednesday and Thursday, I don't even,
Well, Wednesday's the workshop, so we can
Yeah,
keep
Thursday, we
discussing
need to
this.
put everything into
Thursday's your regular
final
meeting.
form, so that it can get
We
done
gotta
by
vote.
Friday,
Thursday,
ideally, right?
vote. Do we have, other things on the agenda, or?
not on special meetings, we don't do that.
Okay.
So this is all, Wednesday will be, maybe just a little bit of fine tuning or whatnot, and then Thursday will be, because they needed it by a certain, the 10th or something like that.
Ideally, yeah, they've already extended it. Ideally, they want it by Friday and Monday at the absolute latest.
Okay.
So that's why we need to meet Thursday.
Can we buy that some extra time because Jason got sick and Ashley got sick and
Blame it
Jason
on
was
me
on
again.
vacation and he was like on permanent.
All right,
Anyway.
so I, at Jason's request, I move that we adjourn.
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Oh.